across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, good afternoon. Welcome. It's the home of common sense, of course. Thank you to Julia. She's not back tomorrow. She's back on Monday, right here on Talk. Lots to get through, including that legislation allowing 16-year-olds to vote at the next general election, the Representation of People's Bill, which will include measures to tighten rules around political donations and all sorts of other things. But fundamentally, should 16-year-olds get the vote? Are you serious? Also this afternoon, Sir Jim Ratcliffe has apologised over his claims that Britain has been colonised by immigration. Reform leader Nigel Farage rejected Sir Keir Starmer's demands for the United co-owner to apologise for his, quote, offensive comments, instead claiming that Labour had ignored the impact of immigration in the UK. Jim Ratcliffe has since stated that he's very sorry if his language caused offence. He didn't need to do that, Jim. Details to come. And the Prime Minister is accused of packing his government with paedophile apologists. The Prime Minister was skewed in the Commons over his decision to hand a peerage to his former communication chief, Matthew Doyle, despite knowing he'd stayed friends with a paedophile. We'll have more on that story coming up. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. Now, we briefly touched on this yesterday, and now we have the details. As predicted, this government are going to go hell for leather in making sure that 16-year-olds have the right to vote.
Yes, I want to see that vote for 16 and 17-year-olds. If you can work, if you can pay tax, if you can serve in your armed forces, then you ought to be able to vote.
Well, you can't stand for Parliament unless you're 18. So there's that. You can't serve on a jury, you can't get a tattoo, and you can't buy a firework. So I reckon that's probably a kind of fairly clear-cut example of what an adult is. You get that full status, of course, when you get to 18. And we'll come on to the final reasons why this idea is pants in a moment. But it is worth a word on why Labour are doing it. And I know you're going to be ahead of me on this one. It's really simple. It's got naff all to do with democracy and everything to do with a demographic version of gerrymandering. 16-year-olds are more likely to be Labour or Green voters. And this is what the whole thing is all about. You should be at home at 16 playing with your Action Man or your Barbie, for goodness sake, not worrying about the ballot box. 16-year-olds are not really adults. Let's be honest, it's not even legal to be recognised at that age. But that legislation to allow 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds to vote at the next general election is beginning its journey through the parliamentary system. As I said at the beginning, the Representation of People Bill has a few other bits and pieces to it as well. But let's focus on this 16-year-olds getting the vote thing. I mean, what did I know about politics at 16? I pretty much, it's great when people are engaged. There's got to be a point when you say, what's the most logical age? Just think about this. Take your own politics out of it. Take my views on why Labour are doing it out of it. Just basically, objectively, stand at a distance and ask yourself, what is the best age for someone to vote for I would probably say maybe 20 would be good. 20 would be a good start. 16, that's a bit of a no-no. The government said lowering the age would engage young people into democracy and ensure their voices are heard, even though they're not strictly an adult. James Cleverly for the Conservatives said the Tories are clear that people become adults at 18 and that its citizenship rights, such as voting, should be gained then. The minimum voting age is already 16, of course, for local elections and parliamentary ones in Scotland. And in Wales, you can vote at the elections in the Senate as well at 16. Again, Seriously, the only reason I can think as to why somebody would want to lower the age to 16 is because they think they stand more to gain from it. You haven't got to know much about, we've all been a 16-year-old, but you haven't got to know much about the behaviour of a 16-year-old, all the other elements of being 16, the fact that you're still pretty much well, you're still at school, of course, at 16, so there's that. So Labour would be the chief beneficiaries of 16-year-olds voting. It's as simple as that. Should 16-year-olds get the vote. Very simple question, 0344 499 1000. And if that isn't bamboozling enough, Jim Ratcliffe, the owner of Manchester United, has only gone and chucked his own firework into the mix with these comments.
I don't know whether it's just the apparatus that hasn't allowed Keir to do it, or he's maybe too nice. He's a nice, I mean, I know Keir, he's a nice man, I like him. But it's a tough job, and I think you have to do some difficult things with the UK to get it back on track, because at the moment I don't think the economy is in a good... You can't afford... you can't have an economy with 9 million people on benefits and huge levels of immigrants coming in. I mean, the UK is being colonised. It's costing too much money. It will cause...
It's been colonised?
It'll cause... Well, yeah. The UK is being colonised by immigrants, really, isn't it?
And it was those comments that caused the problem. It's being colonised by immigrants. Now, he's not right on the population thing. I think we've all established that. What about his comments on colonisation? Here's the take on it. So what? So what? Even if you think he's wrong, are you seriously saying he's not... What, is there a list of words that you're meant to use? PM Keir Starmer, as ever, more annoyed about this kind of shizzle than actual things, said he should apologise. And we're all shouting from the sidelines, don't apologise, Jim. Even if you disagree, why should someone have their choice of words policed by Keir Starmer? This is insane. Don't do it, Jim. And then, just like his football club in the 91st minute, he did it. He apologised for his choice of language. I don't know why he would... A few people around him would have gone, Jim, just say your apology. I mean, this guy is the perfectly formed example of British success. He grew up in a council house. He's the son of a joiner, did rather well, legged it eventually over to Monaco, and who wouldn't want to live in Monaco? Fair play to him. It's not North Korea. You can do that kind of stuff. Now he's had to say, I apologise if I offended anyone. Now, some people, of course, purists will go, well, that's still not an apology, because you said, I apologise if, or apologise but. I always think apologies that come with a but are actually good things, not bad things. You get more detail about the apology. I'm sorry, but my dog just died. That's why I was behaving like an arse. I'm sorry, but I've just been fired. I'm sorry. Yeah, the but or the if is totally fine. But in this case, I mean, he didn't really need to apologise. You can be screaming, you could be a rabid old lefty that thinks that Jim Ratcliffe was stirring the pot when he used words like colonised. But actually, his right to say it is the fundamental right. It's the Voltairean thing, right? It's fundamental. He's allowed to say that. And if he's wrong, he's wrong. He's allowed to say that. The idea the Prime Minister has got time to worry about what the owner of Man United said in terms of his choice of words. Oh, get in the bin, Keir, for goodness sake. You might want to pick up, though, on the fundamentals of what he did say and what he actually... We know what he meant by this, right? We know what he meant, and there's the point. Thoughts on that too? 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word on this and the other big stories of the day. Peter Barnes is with us, political strategist. Peter, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. How are you doing?
Always, yeah, good at this end. Always good to see you. So we've got Keir Starmer accused of hypocrisy today after Labour brought in that new law to let 16-year-olds vote, or they're starting the journey of the new law. Tories claim the PM doesn't know what makes someone an adult as they tore into the overhaul of election rules. Let's have a listen again to what Keir Starmer even had to say.
Yes, I want to see 16 and 17-year-olds voting. They can go out and work. They can serve in our armed forces. And, of course, if they are out and working, they pay tax. And, therefore, they should have a say over how the money they're paying in is being used. So, yes, I want to see that vote for 16 and 17-year-olds. If you can work, if you can pay tax, if you can serve in your armed forces, then you ought to be able to vote.
Yes, you can't drive a car at 16 and you can't actually get married unless you've got parental consent until you're 18. So, I mean, there's loads of things. I mentioned tattoos, serving on a jury. Can't become an MP, but you can vote for one. That's going to be the sort of bizarre situation. What do you make of this, Peter? You might have a completely different view, by the way.
No, I genuinely don't. If anything, I'm more of the kind of American idea of president where you have to be 45 to run to be that. So I think we should actually increase it rather than actually decrease it more than anything. That's what the evidence actually shows. But the reason a lot of people think, obviously, I heard your opening there, everyone thinks it's about votes. That doesn't seem to be the case because the Labour Party have lost a dramatic amount of the youth vote to the Green Party because basically they're a newer brand, a cleaner brand, and they don't look like you're like an accountant or anything like. They don't look like management. There's something fresh. There's something new. There's something different. If you look at Corbyn mania, like the kind of what they called the youth quake back in 2017, what it wasn't more young people voting. It was all people voting in one direction, and it was for change. That's what, if they want to get the youth vote, that's what they've actually got to do. They remember that thing he kept saying all that general election, change. He actually had to deliver it, and he didn't, and that's why the youth have left Labour, and I doubt they'll come back anytime soon.
But, of course, left-wing voters, as in not just Labour but the Green Party, there could be a lot of those youngsters, those 16-year-olds who think this Zach character, who, by the way, I can't be the only person thinks. I mean, he is, to me, objectively awful as a performer, as a pod. Don't know what he's done to have this rising star moment because he's terrible. Nonetheless, a lot of people, a lot of youngsters, they like the Green thing. Maybe they will benefit from this.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt, they're looking now to hold about 37% of the youth vote. That's the highest I think it's ever been in like the last, or for one party to hold that much in the last, I would say, 4 or 5 general elections, if not longer, realistically. It's actually fascinating, the rise of Zach Palante, because I agree with you. He's absolutely abhorrent in every possible way. However, he's doing very well. And if you think about it, it's kind of the Nigel Farage factor. The game is set for him. All he has to do is just kick the ball over the line and he's scored. It's not difficult for him to do very well because the Labour Party is collapsing in the same way that the Conservatives are collapsing. That's helped the rise of reform. So, we are seeing the kind of shattering of the two parties, and this is what we're going to have in the future: is more Zach Palanskis and more tactical voting and all this kind of stuff. Welcome to European politics, everybody.
And genuinely, I know there are other countries around the world that have this 16 thing. I honestly, Peter, cannot think of any reason why they would want to do this other than everything we've just talked about, that this is about a kind of demographic gerrymandering almost. There can't be objectively any other purpose to it.
Well, that's the thing. I've literally spent all this morning trying to figure this out, and for the life of me, I can't, because, like I said, the polling doesn't go in their direction. It doesn't seem to be that there's any kind of long-term projections that would go in that direction either. So all I can think is it's Keir Starmer saying, well, we've got to announce something to get rid of the Mandelson story. That's the only way I can think that they're doing this. And if it is, then, I mean, to mess around with our democracy to get over a internal party problem is quite the doozy, even for the British government. I'll say that, but it's starting to look that that's realistically why we're having to have this conversation. But I will say there are other things that are going before the House that are not that bad, by the way. The tightening up of donations, I think, is a really important step, and a lot of the kind of issues around our elections, because they're not the most secure, is actually going to be tidied up. So it's not necessarily all bad, but this particular one is abhorrent.
Let's have a look at this story as well, Peter. I mean, this is interesting. We touched on it. We played the clip at the beginning. The Man United owner, businessman and multi-billionaire Jim Ratcliffe has now apologised for his comments over Britain being colonised by immigrants. Let's have a listen. This was him speaking to Sky News, what he originally said.
You can't have an economy with 9 million people on benefits and huge levels of immigrants coming in. I mean, the UK is being colonised. It's costing too much money. It will cause... It'll cause... Well, the UK is being colonised by immigrants, really, isn't it? I mean, the population of the UK was 58 million in 2020. Now it's 70 million. That's 12 million people.
Now, Peter, he's wrong on the population increase thing, although it has increased. But on the specific point that he made, I mean, colonisation, apparently a huge pejorative, an inflammatory term. I mean, the last time he looked, Jim Ratcliffe, like Jim Smith in Grimsby, can use whatever word he likes to describe what he sees and what he feels.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, the actual dictionary definition, if people want to get that technical, has nothing to do with it being a kind of organised force or anything to do with empire or anything like that. This is literally just the kind of woke left hopping onto a word so that so they can weaponise it against anybody that dares bring up the issue of immigration. That's the only reason that they do these things, is to control the narratives by cancelling certain words. But it did annoy me, I have to admit, when he came out and apologised. But I understand why he did, because, well, unfortunately, we don't live in a woke-free world as much as people wish that we did. There's still a great impact that, that this stuff has, and considering his position in certain companies, of course he's going to have to apologise. But he's perfectly right on the kind of principle that realistically, if people come here and they stay, they're no longer a migrant. They are by definition a settler. So therefore it is a colonisation. But it's just basic understanding of the English language. But yet again, we can't have that debate because the lefties don't like it when you keep throwing facts in the face, because it didn't really help Keir Starmer's argument when we had growth figures of 0.1%.
No.
So it's kind of making his point for him.
And the Prime Minister, of course, hit back on X. Well, he didn't. One of his advisors wrote for him. Offensive and wrong. Britain is a proud, tolerant and diverse country. Jim Ratcliffe should apologise. I mean, if you wanted to know everything that is wrong with Keir Starmer, his role as Prime Minister, his position on the current spectrum of politics, and why people are legging it away from mainstream parties, it is a vacuous and meaningless, platitudinous response like that.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. That was definitely written by ChatGPT. I have no doubt about it, because it's just a word salad. Realistically, I find it quite funny that he's coming out with statements like this from the guy who said island of strangers, and then he had to walk that back rather dramatically. So, yet again, Keir says one thing one day, he says something else the next day, so nobody really knows where he stands, because he doesn't stand for anything. Also, the idea that Britain is some kind of diverse nation throughout our history is absolute nonsense. We aren't built on immigration. We're very homogeneous. We're very similar in terms of our culture and all the rest of it. So we're not this great kind of diversity, a patchwork quilt kind of thing, or like a melting pot like America. We never have been. It's not our way. And, that's not a bad thing. And I get a little sick and tired of these arguments, because we always end up circling the same issue, and then it dies down, and then we end up going again. It's rather like people have to kind of accept that the idea of open borders was a failure, and we're living in the consequences of it.
Peter Barnes, stay with us. More to come. Over to you as well. 0344 499 1000. Naturally, we'll take some Ratcliffe comments as well, because I just think that's so fascinating. I think it's more fascinating, in a weird way, of the Prime Minister even getting involved with that. I mean, that's just bizarre. You could even take it further and say it's actually a bit creepy, it's a bit sinister, it's a bit worrying. The Prime Minister, you can't use that word. Why? Because I disagree with you. Because I want to use the word like diverse, that's why. And of course, 16-year-olds getting the vote. Should they? Should they? Really? 16 years old getting the vote. You should be at home watching Blue Peter, for goodness sake. Not knocking around the ballot boxes of a polling station. More on that, more from you. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
We've lived in an era of mass migration, haven't we? Yeah. More people have come into the country since Tony Blair became Prime Minister than in the 1,000 years before then. You know, in the 80s and 90s, we were living in a country where either there was net emigration, so more people were leaving than were coming in every year, or immigration was very low, in the tens of thousands. And the people who were coming in, if you look at the motives of people who were coming in, they were coming in to fill particular shortages in the NHS or, you know, do jobs, set up small businesses.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 22 minutes after 1 o'clock. Loads to get through here. Peter Barnes is with us, dissecting the big stories of the day. Let's go back to our Prime Minister, of course. This was a story that's been unfolding for the last week or so, culminating in Parliament yesterday with Keir Starmer being accused of packing his government with paedophile apologists as he struggled to defend another controversial appointment on Wednesday.
How dare he criticise us? We weren't the ones stuffing government with hypocrites and paedophile apologists.
Well, that's a fair point from Kemi Badenoch. The PM was skewered in the Commons over that decision to hand a peerage to his former communication chief, Matthew Doyle, despite knowing that Mr Doyle had stayed friends with and campaigned for a councillor who was charged with child sex offences. Starmer's response, however, was as punchy as always.
Mr Speaker, Matthew Doyle did not give a full account of his actions. And on Monday, I promised my party and my country there would be change. And yesterday, I removed the whip from Matthew Doyle.
There it is. Peter Barnes, I mean, I think it was Ed Davey who had an unusually effective moment yesterday in PMQs, who said, you know, hang on, you know, to miss one friend of a paedophile is bad, but to miss two of them is, you know, clearly unforgivable, or whatever it was he said. I mean, this is a bizarre place for the Prime Minister to find himself in. You couldn't have written this a couple of months ago.
Yeah, I have to admit, I've started calling him the Walter Mitty of British politics, because he just seems to wander into these situations and, like, everything is happening all around it, and yet he seems to have no idea. He's friends with people like Philip Sands and Lord Harmer. You know, he's got this, every person he meets seems to be a paedophile or a friend of a paedophile. It seems a ridiculous situation for one person to continually find themselves in. But then you remember it's Keir Starmer, it's 2026 and it's Britain, so therefore it must make perfect sense. What I will say, though, is that line of he didn't give a full account. Well, what account did he give? Because if he lied, that's a very different situation. But if you knew enough and you continued on with this, with the pushing him through to the House of Lords, or even appointing him as your Director of Communications, what are you doing? Because it's not really the get out of jail free card that a lot of people think it is. It's rather asks a very more important question with Keir Starmer is, what did you know and when? This is the big thing, that all of this Mandelson stuff, all the kind of fallout is all about that those two questions. What did you know? And when did you know it? Because what's really on trial is Keir Starmer's judgment, and that just seems to be, you know, it's a goner, really.
Yeah, I mean, it really is bizarre, isn't it? I mean, the Mandelson thing, completely unforgivable, because, you know, as we said, it was this time last week, Peter, you know, the fact that the government's own Deputy Prime Minister at the time stayed at Epstein's house. I mean, that would have been known, and that would have been easy for a researcher when they were discussing his appointment to... in fact... It would have been, you'd think somebody within the annals of the civil service or security would have anecdotally been able to throw, we all remember the time that Peter, when he was Deputy PM, stayed at Epstein's house while Epstein was in jail for child sex offences, and he stayed there. But for some reason, that very obvious, very public bit of information never came forward. Or if it did, and this is the problem, of course, it was ignored. And did something else happen with this other chap?
Yeah, so I have to admit, this is the great argument, isn't it, about are people withholding it? But I will say that having worked with close protection before and been in and around government where they exist very openly, they don't come forward. Their job is to protect, not to snitch, because the worst thing that these people can have is whoever they're protecting trying to sneak away from them, trying to get away and hide things from them. That puts everybody in risk. So there is a kind of, we don't say anything because they need to keep the protection there. It's not right, but I understand the principle of it. But again, you're perfectly bang on. What did he know? Because if you're now telling me that he didn't give the full disclosure, then we surely have to say, well, what questions were you asking? Who was asking the questions? Did you sit on information? Did you not push hard enough? You know, there's a lot of other questions that keep coming from Keir Starmer, and I don't think he realises what, like, a trap that he's setting for himself. But I do think now this is actually not really about Starmer. It's more about the Labour Party brand and be able to survive a general election, not Keir Starmer, but the brand itself. Yeah. Because I do think, I agree with Lord Glassman, what he said the other day, that the Blair era is about to walk itself out the door. I really do believe that. I think we're seeing the end of the Blair experiment.
Yeah, I think you're right. Let's just try and get this story in as well. The school shooter in Canada, 18 years old, horrendous story of this Jesse Van Roetzaler, who opened fire, murdered his mother and brother, then killed 6 people in a school, previously seen posing with a rifle. What is really just bizarre about this story, Peter, and I'm sure you're ahead of me, is that it appears that when reporting it, everybody has been more concerned not to misgender this killer than they are about the actual story. I find this so disturbing, to the point that even the police chief giving a press conference was referring to the killer as Jesse, in the way you might refer to the victim. You tend not to have such a friendly, familiar term when discussing someone who's just shot 8 people dead.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. It doesn't surprise me, though, if I'm being brutally honest, because I always look back over here in the UK that we never give out the details of people, you know, who don't come from the UK or, you know, happen to not be white or whatever. I find it absolutely disturbing. But the one I always remember is the Clapham stabbing outside of a nightclub, and they made it very clear that this guy was dangerous. You shouldn't go near him. They didn't tell you what he looked like. They didn't give you a photo. They made it was a public safety issue, and they don't give you the information to protect yourself. And it's because they don't trust us, Ian. They don't trust us to have that information and to not go out to try and find him. You know, I understand it to a degree, but at what point are we are now saying that everybody else's life is at risk because we don't want to offend somebody? Yeah. That's what they're saying now, is that your life is worth less. They even refer to this character as a gun person. They don't want to say gunman. Because poor old confused Jesse might get offended by that. Yeah, I have to admit, it's Canada, now dead, if I'm being brutally honest. So. Yeah, but this is the thing. Even now, they won't say anything. But it's again, my thing is it's Canada, but it's just like woke, like worse than we've got it. I have to admit. But I will say that we do have a big problem with young people at the moment in terms of the level of violence that we're seeing, not just here, but obviously in America, we see it in Europe as well, and Canada. And we really need to get to grips with this. I think we lurch to things like social media as a kind of easy get out of jail free card. And I do think we have to start doing some hard work about understanding what is happening. Why is everybody so disconnected? And, you know, I think these are the incidences that we really should knuckle down. But obviously we get trapped in to the trans argument again because nobody has the bravery to say that person is not what that person says they are. Spot on, Peter. Thank you very much indeed, as ever. Peter Barnes, political strategist. Always good to have Peter on with us. Thank you to him. Comments coming through from you thick and fast on 2 subjects here, Jim Ratcliffe and voting for 16-year-olds. Margaret in Birmingham says, afternoon, Ian. Why has Sir Jim Ratcliffe apologised? Starmer is laughing his socks off. What happened to free speech? Do we have to run everything past number 10 before we voice our opinion? Starmer sat in the White House. We have free speech. What a hypocrite. We need a general election now. It's a very good point. He said it a couple of times, usually when he's with Trump. I want to make it clear we do have free speech, which is absolutely true, unless you're Jim Ratcliffe. And Dave, picking up on the point that Peter just made, Starmer was the man that suggested we were an island of strangers when talking about immigration, which was, I think I'm right in saying, was a kind of an Enoch Powell kind of line. That was used back in the day. I think one could reasonably argue that if you're looking for words that feed into perhaps a different kind of narrative, Keir's Island of Strangers probably trumps Ratcliffe's colonisation comments. But we'll take your comments on that as well. 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, just gone 1:30. This one in from Sean. Sean's in Grimsby. When I was 16, I was only interested in money and girls, not politics. That started in my mid-20s. 21 should be the voting age when we were a tiny bit more mature. I think that sounds fairly reasonable. Keir Starmer, of course, has been accused of hypocrisy today as Labour's brought in a new law to let 16-year-olds vote. Let's have a listen to what he said.
Yes, I want to see that vote for 16 and 17-year-olds. If you can work, if you can pay tax, if you can serve in your armed forces, then you ought to be able to vote.
You ought to be able to vote. Joanna Williams is author of How Woke Won and writer at The Spectator. Joanna, good afternoon to you. I mean, I always think, frankly, about 72 would be a good age to start voting, because by that time you've seen and done it all. However, realistically, there's a lot of things, and everyone has their own way of compiling a list on this. And you can't be an MP at 16, you can't get married at 16, you can't even buy a firework. But you can vote coming soon, according to Keir Starmer. What do you think?
Well, I think it speaks to an awful lot of confusion about what adulthood means nowadays.
Yeah.
Exactly as you point out, we're trying to stop we have stopped 16-year-olds from buying cigarettes. Certainly I could do that when I was 16 back in the day. We're trying to even keep teenagers off social media, and yet we think they can be given the right to determine the future of the country come age 16. I mean, an easy way to see this is just Labour Party attempt to gerrymander the election to try and rig things in their favour. They think young people are more likely to lean left. I actually don't think that's true, and I think they might be in for a nasty surprise if they set too much store by that.
I mean, what about the Green Party, the Green voters? Because that's an area where we are told that this Polanski character, whose star is rising, and I genuinely, objectively, I hope intelligently, cannot fathom that for love nor money, Joanna, but that's another story. Nonetheless, seems to be doing much better than previous people who've run the Green Party. They could be the chief beneficiaries of 16-year-olds voting. What do you say to that?
They could be. I mean, the data I've seen suggests that 16-year-olds, much like the rest of us, are actually incredibly polarised and are going to either end. I mean, there are a sizable proportion of 16-year-olds, particularly 16-year-old boys, who are actually attracted to reform. And a proportion of 16-year-old girls who are attracted to the Green Party. But I think a lot of 16-year-olds are just not that interested in politics. And that's, for me, one of the biggest reasons why I really object to giving the vote to 16-year-olds. Obviously going back a long way in history now, but when women got the vote, it took years of campaigning. You look at every big extension of the franchise, the Reform Act, the suffragettes, these voting was something meaningful that people engaged in political struggle to demand that right. 16-year-olds are not marching on Downing Street demanding the right to vote. So this is being dished out to them like a reward for good behaviour, or more to the point, an extension of their school citizenship classes with the assumption that they're going to learn in school kind of the correct way, and they do this as a dutiful responsibility rather than a meaningful political act, which is what voting should be.
And that's got all sorts of deeply sinister statist undertones to it.
Well, absolutely. And I think that's how Starmer sees 16-year-olds as a stage army that can be dragooned into performing the way he wants them to perform. Like I say, I just hope, and having 3 children myself, that there's a kind of rebellious instinct in teenagers and they don't go along with this and they don't do what they're supposed to do, which, I assume Starmer wants them to dutifully turn out and put a cross next to the Labour Party. But I think this is a terrible move. I think it degrades politics. And I think it speaks to our confusion about what it means to be an adult. Yeah, I think I've got a 12-year-old, 12 and a bit. So in just over 3.5 years' time, the idea that my 12-year-old, I'm laughing as I'm saying it. Obviously, he won't be 12 then, he'll be 16. But if he's anything like he is now, he shouldn't be anywhere near an election booth. No, absolutely. And I think it's a real cheap shot of Starmer to link this to 16-year-olds paying taxes and working, etc., because it's actually the case that far fewer 16-year-olds, thanks to Starmer and Reeves, and their budget mistakes, I would argue, far fewer 16-year-olds have jobs nowadays than ever before. Again, at risk of sounding like an old codger, back in my day, I did have a Saturday job age 16. I was there in the cafe every weekend and in restaurants and pubs in the evening as a 17-year-old, but that's not common for 16-year-olds nowadays. So for Starmer to suggest that 16-year-olds are all out there putting in a shift, paying taxes, and therefore need to vote as a kind of right for the responsibility that they've waged is just rubbish, disingenuous rubbish.
Yeah, I'm with you. Joanna, thank you very much indeed for that. Joanna Williams, writer at The Spectator, author of How Woke Won. And she just invoked the memory of the Saturday job, which we've talked about many times before. Is that still a thing? A Saturday job? I mean, it always was, sometimes an after-school job. When I was 16, I was over there in Iceland, whacking me frozen chops into, well, about 10,000 freezers in that flipping place. It was massive. Let's talk to Darren Hughes, Chief Exec of the Electoral Reform Society. Good afternoon to you, Darren. You look like a man that had a Saturday job.
I definitely had a Saturday job. I was thinking back to those early morning starts back in the day. So yeah.
Indeed. You've got a slightly different view on 16-year-olds voting. What do you think?
Yeah, we're broadly supportive of this. It's a way of extending the franchise, bringing in more people into democracy and making elections take account of the views of more citizens, people who are going to be living, hopefully, substantially long lives in the country. And so both for the reasons of trying to improve democracy and improve things like voter turnout, etc., but also getting the political world and policy development to take into account people at all stages of life. We think that's quite a positive move. And we also look at the fact that in Wales and Scotland, there's been votes at 16 and 17 now for quite a few years, and that's been a positive development there as well. So there is an anomaly where 16 and 17-year-olds who are not in Scotland and Wales but are in the UK don't have the vote. So this measure would also make that standard for all 16 and 17-year-olds.
Now, you'll be familiar with that big old list of other things you can't do at 16. This is the argument that's always thrown back at those like yourself who support this notion. But it is fairly extensive. I mean, you're not quite an adult. You can't get married without parental permission. I'm talking about England and Wales there. You can't become an MP, which is rather interesting. Can't serve on a jury. Can't get a tattoo. You can't even buy a firework, Darren.
That's right. A lot of those measures are things to protect from harm until people can make a choice about those sorts of, in some cases, irreversible decisions that might be being made. Whereas this, I think, is in a different category because voting should be a happy, participative act of citizenry, and it's actually something that's a good thing to be involved with, testing out your ideas, debating and questioning with other young people and people in your family and people that you know. So in actual fact, it's a positive thing to be doing. And I think those other examples are things where you're trying to prevent harm from being from taking place. So I'd see it in a different category.
No, I do understand that, but I guess in many respects, have you not answered the question in another way there? Because if there are things that you need protecting from at 16, that would suggest that you're still not yet a fully fledged adult. And if you're not a fully fledged adult, then maybe voting probably isn't the best thing.
Well, I think it's more the case of things that are harmful. So, clearly smoking tobacco is a harmful thing to do and has always been seen as something to try and delay for as long as is reasonably possible before people might fall into a habit they find very difficult to give up. Whereas the habit of voting is never going to be an interruption or a difficulty or a negativity in your life, I think. So I think the more people that are informed in a democracy and who are being listened to and asking tough questions, that's got to be a positive thing. And we are kind of scratching around for things to be upbeat about at the moment. And this seems like a good thing to try and pursue.
I mean, you talked about things that are harmful. I mean, some might argue that voting for the Green Party is harmful. So, I mean, there's maybe an example of where this has all gone wrong.
But isn't that the amazing thing that people can have views on all of the political parties and all of the candidates and try and persuade people to vote for them or against them based on their values, their principles, what what the policies are. And I think that, if political parties knew that there was a substantial number of young people who were participating in politics, there might be more emphasis on policies that address the needs that they have. We know that voter groups by age that turn out in big numbers tend to dominate quite a lot of the policy discussion. And so that's a positive way of seeing that as well.
I'm not pouncing this on you because I'm testing your knowledge on all of this, Darren, but can you enlighten us, if you know, what the rest of the world are doing in this respect? What other Western countries, similar countries to ours, we know Scotland and Wales have already addressed the 16 thing. What about across the EU and beyond?
Yeah, so established democracies in the EU, like, for example, Austria, have had votes at 16, and then some large democracies in South America, for example, Brazil, that they've had votes. The franchise has been from 16 and 17 for quite a few years as well. I think the best local examples, though, are the Scottish and Welsh examples. And in Scotland, where the vote was first extended to include younger people for the referendum back in 2014, it's been interesting watching with local council elections and Scottish parliamentary elections that support in Scotland's gone from just under a third of people who thought it was a good idea to now in excess of 60%. So people have seen it in action locally and seen that it's been a positive thing. So although there are international examples, 18 is still by far the more common age, but this has been a democratic innovation in Scotland and Wales that seems to be working. And I think providing it's put together with a lot of other initiatives to support young people as they enter the democratic world, that this could be a really positive development.
Darren, great to have you on, sir. Thank you for speaking with us. Darren Hughes, Chief Exec of the Electoral Reform Society. Different view to our previous guest. I tend to agree with our previous guy. I hear what Darren's saying, and it's kind of a lovely idea, and there's always going to be some 16-year-olds that are kind of engaged, and they're engaged sort of intellectually, not just emotionally, to certain issues. I think on balance, kids that age are more likely to go for the left, although I think what Joanna said was kind of true. I think there's a lot of young guys who very much are kind of refined. I was on a train about a year ago, and I ended up talking. Everybody had a drink, including these lads, and in fact, I think they were probably younger than 16. But they're a bit loud, and I'm sitting there on my own, got my headphones on, and somehow, one of them went, "Hey, mate," and I ended up chatting to them, and they started talking about reform. And then they went, "Do you know Tommy?" And then it was all of that. It was that kind of conversation. So there is that, and there are a few other conversations as well. There is that contingent of young guys, I think, that will gravitate maybe to the right. And as Joanna said, more girls likely to gravitate. It's strange that it does divide on the gender thing there. Paula's in Herefordshire. What do you think on this, Paula? Good afternoon to you.
Hello.
Hello.
In 1972, I was allowed to get married at 16, mainly because I was a stroppy teenager and would have probably done something stupid like running off to Gretna Green. I have still married to the same person, and I'm 70. But I can tell you that even though all of my friends could have run a house and all the rest of it at 16, my daughter at 16, I wouldn't have left in charge of a bag of rubbish. Yeah. So I think they're getting dafter. I would like to see the voting age go up to 21, because I don't know who these people are working at 16 and paying tax, but my daughter couldn't get a job when she was 17 because of the insurance policies that businesses have to have.
Well, so there's a big old list, isn't it? And the list of things you can't do at 16 for good reason.
You no longer can get married at 16 at all because they've stopped it because of migrant marriages.
Was that the reason why? I don't know what the reason was. I didn't know it was because of that, but either way, you can get married at 16 with parental permission.
No, not anymore, I don't think.
Are you sure?
I think they stopped it.
All right.
I think they've made it 18.
Maybe they did. That's interesting. Regardless, the other things you can't do, you can't become an MP, but you can vote. You can vote for an MP. You can't serve on a jury.
And I don't know who's going to be going into the army at 16. They're still supposed to be in school, aren't they?
Yeah.
Until 19. So I think he's just been an absolutely useless lying Prime Minister who grinds my gears every hour of the day.
Grinds my gears. I love that phrase. Paula, thank you for starting us off. What do you know at 16? Everybody is innocent at 16. You don't really know stuff. You think you know stuff. You want to know more stuff. By the way, at 16... just be 16, enjoy your life, think about what is ahead of you. I know, there's a lot of struggles around, perhaps those struggles may well be different to what they were in previous generations. There's a lot going on in this kind of slightly confused world, but it should be, despite 16-year-olds who, clearly know how to go out and have a drink and a good time and all the rest of it, there is still a kind of an innocence to that era. And I think that's when I say an innocence, I don't mean you don't know anything. I just mean that it shouldn't be bogged down with all the other stuff at that age. Reg says, when I was 16, I was that innocent. I thought an erection was there for weeing over a wall. Good point. This is Talk.
Well, we've lived in an era of mass migration, haven't we? Yeah. More people have come into the country since Tony Blair became Prime Minister than in the 1,000 years before then. In the 80s and 90s, we were living in a country where either there was net emigration, so more people were leaving than were coming in every year, or immigration was very low, in the tens of thousands. And the people who were coming in, if you look at the motives of people who were coming in, they were coming in to fill particular shortages in the NHS or, do jobs, set up small businesses.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
There's from Troy in Suffolk who says reference voting should take the age out of it, and you should be able to vote when you've finished education and worked for more than 12 months, as many youngsters in education beyond the age of 20. Fair point. One here from Shimmy who says, if you can have the vote at 16, you're being classed that you are fully equipped as an adult. So, in that case, they should have all the rights of 18-year-olds. Get married, join the army, buy alcohol, buy glue, drive a car, anything that you're allowed to do at the age of 18. It is that simple. Look, you can't... There's lots of stupid people over the age of 18 that vote, OK? There's many... I mean, millions of stupid people vote. We know that. That's why we have a Labour government. So you could argue there should be a barrier in all sorts of ways. But you have to somewhere take a kind of stab at what seems to be the most kind of all-round appropriate age. I don't think anyone objectively would come to the conclusion that 16 is that age. We'll take some more calls on that shortly. We're also talking about Jim Ratcliffe, co-owner of Man United, a Brit, a working-class boy made good, a billionaire, although he lives in Monaco now. Don't blame him for that. William is down in London on this story. He's messed up, but now he's apologised, William. What do you make of it?
Thank you, Ian, for taking my call. And good afternoon, British public. Ian, I was so happy what he said yesterday about colonisation. He was absolutely right. And today I'm disappointed in that he's withdrawn some of the comment, but he did say some people at the end of the sentence. He did say some people, but people like us, Ian, we know the country has been colonised or
but William,
mass immigration.
Yeah, no, I 100%. But even if you disagree with him, what the hell is a Prime Minister doing policing his language, saying he should apologise?
He's on his last legs, Ian, isn't he? Come on, Keir Starmer. He's on his last legs, and he wants to start trying to appeal to other people, you know, the left and liberals. It's ridiculous. He's finished. I can't wait for him to go. I'm going to have, Ian, a massive party. Everyone can come have a good drink and a knees up when he leaves, Keir Starmer.
Yeah, I like that.
But Jim, going back to Jim Ratcliffe, a Brexiteer, he knows that all our energy prices are knackered. That's why he's withdrawn his chemical plants, etc. He's going over to America. He's paid more tax than all the people that have dismissed him to this country ever paid. Put together.
That's absolutely spot on. And he grew up in a council house, and I think that's a fantastic journey that he's had. Great call, William. Thank you very much indeed for that. Back to 16-year-olds voting. Here's a voice note from Peter.
Good afternoon, Ian. Just a quick point on lowering the voting age to 16. If we're going to treat 16-year-olds as voters, fine, but then we need strict political neutrality inside schools. What safeguards are going to be in place to stop political bias in the classroom? If a teacher strongly backs one side, what protects the student who disagrees? Once you turn pupils into voters, classrooms stop being abstract discussions. They become live political environments. That needs serious thought.
That's a cracking point, actually. The education establishments of this country are regularly accused of a kind of left-wing bias. When I had my kids' open day, parents' evening thing, which is just bizarre that I found myself going to the first one, a secondary school, and you talk to all the teachers, and I knew they'd done Thatcher in history. And my lad had said to me, so she was like, she did some good things and not such good things, and I was quite intrigued by how that divvied up. But nonetheless, we go to parents' evening, and the history teacher says, we've done quite a lot of modern politics. We're doing some of the philosophers. She said, we did. I said, you did Thatcher as well, didn't you? She said, yeah, we did Thatcher. And now we're moving on to some of the great philosophers in terms of, impact and what their message said, or what the relevance of their kind of core inner thoughts are today, etc. And she was explaining all of that, and it was all fantastic. She was a very nice lady, and I said, are you going to talk about the greatest philosopher ever? And she went, who's that then? And I went, Margaret Thatcher. Now, I think she looked at me at that moment like only a disappointed mother can look at a child. I think that's the look I got. I can't be 100% sure. Let's go to Darren down in Surrey on voting. What do you got for us, Darren?
Yeah, hi, afternoon, Ian.
Hi.
Yes, I just wanted to get involved in this because my 14-year-old son is very interested in politics and very political. Now, there's two ways of looking at this. Why? I asked myself why. Well, possibly because in the radio I have talk radio on a lot of the time, and then on the evening I like to switch over to Patrick Christie at 10 o'clock. And he gets intrigued in this, and he's a big Nigel Farage fan, and he doesn't mind telling him all his mates about it. Now, I've said to him that you shouldn't let yourself get too overly influenced by my opinion or other people's opinion. Look at the facts, get your own information, and draw your own opinion, okay? And that's what I've tried to instill in him. And but then I also find myself asking him to tone things down, like the other day when they had potential companies coming in talking about what jobs are because they're going into the options you see next year. asking him, please don't start saying certain things, you know, that he hears about on the radio and forms opinions from what he sees.
Yep.
So he's now, bearing in mind he's 14, he's year 9 at the moment.
Sure.
So he met up with, he's got himself a placement, work experience placement next year at the Borough Council. It's a Labour coalition. And he's over the moon, excited. Nothing to do with politics. I've always taught him that a political part's not a football team.
Yep.
And I think we had this conversation a few weeks ago, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Great way to put it.
But would I think he'd vote with a sane mind? No. Does he have any responsibilities actually to have? No. Would he be able to get a sort of 16? I think in a lot of areas, I drive around a lot for my work, and I notice in certain areas that there's a lot of people employed in jobs that you would traditionally have had students working in, where you've got people there who are obviously imported into these jobs. They don't speak any English. You can't converse with anyone. I said to an owner of a Subway the other day, and I said, "Oh, you haven't got those screens. How wonderful." And he's a Sikh guy, and he goes, "Yeah, I know." He goes, "It's great to understand your customers, to get to know your customers, and you get to know what they like." I said, "It's human interaction." Oh, I'm not bothered about who's there, or what they look like, or what their beliefs are. What I worry about is that we are, and I know I'm going off piece here slightly, is that we're taking away that human interaction.
Sorry, Darren, your phone line's not great. Taking away what?
Sorry.
They said what? Taking away?
Taking away the human interaction from these places.
Yes, absolutely.
Because we can't communicate. And then they'll say, he's saying about 16-year-olds could work. Where are they working? Yeah, indeed. Darren, your phone line has now conked, but it hit the clock nicely, though, and you make some great points. Thank you very much indeed for that. Somebody called Ian Collins says, the older you are, the more votes you should have. So at 16, you get 1 vote, but when you're 32, you get 2 votes, and so on. Look, I kind of like there's something in that, isn't there? So when you get to sort of 64, you'd have 4 votes. Yeah, maybe that could work as well. And Lenny says, I believe Starmer suffers from blind eye syndrome. He only sees what he wants to see. I also believe we was all restricted from discussions until we were declared an adult. 16 is not an age to be declared an adult. Good point as ever from Lenny. Right now it's 2 o'clock. Let's get the latest news headlines on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk Across.
It is the Afternoon Empire. So much to get on with here. More of your calls on the way as well. We are discussing, of course, that legislation to allow 16-year-olds to vote at the next general election, beginning its journey through Parliament now. The representation of the People's Bill also includes other measures about tightening rules on things like political donations. Should a 16-year-old really be allowed to walk into a polling station, nip into the old ballot booth, and pick up that trusty pen, or is it a pencil? No, it's a pen, and daub their cross on the party of choice? What do you think? More calls on that. We're also discussing, and why wouldn't we be, Sir Jim Ratcliffe. He is, of course, co-owner of Man United. He's now apologised over those claims that Britain has been colonised by immigrants. The Reform leader Nigel Farage rejected Sir Keir Starmer's demands that he should apologise, but apologise he did. What a curious place we've arrived in when the Prime Minister decides on what you can and cannot say. And speaking of the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer now accused of packing his government with paedophile apologists. I know this story is from yesterday, but it's worth actually, now we've digested this, looking at the implications. He was skewered in the Commons over his decision to hand a peerage to his former communication chief, Matthew Doyle, despite knowing that he'd stayed friends with a paedophile. And Starmer got a hammering yesterday from Kemi Badenoch and Ed Davey. It was a beautiful moment. We'll talk about that a little later as well. Everything you need to know and all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. Paul's in South Wales, who says, great show as always, Ian. What Starmer said regarding 16-year-olds voting sounds fantastic. Can we now extend the working and taxation principle further to restrict voting only to those that work and pay tax, regardless of age? So, yeah, well, they were Starmer's own words. They work, they pay tax. Yeah, if that's the criteria, I get it. You can't leave school until you're 18, says this one, unless it's an apprenticeship. Doesn't Starmer actually know the law? Good point. And Gareth says if Starmer wants to give 16-year-olds on the basis that some work and pay taxes, then so they should have a say. I'm on board with that as long as it works both ways. And those who've never worked or paid taxes don't get a vote. Similar point again. Won't work that way though, will it? Two-tier again, says Gareth. Great point from Gareth. Loads to discuss here. I think the Ratcliffe story is particularly interesting, not just because of what he said, but because of the Prime Minister's intervention on what he said. He should apologise, said Keir Starmer on a post on X. Let's remind ourselves of what the Manchester United co-owner, working-class boy made good, multi-billionaire Jim Ratcliffe actually said on the issue of immigration.
You can't have an economy with 9 million people on benefits and huge levels of immigrants coming in. I mean, the UK is being colonised. It's costing too much money. It will cause... It'll cause... Well, yeah. The UK is being colonised by immigrants, really, isn't it? I mean, the population of the UK was 58 million in 2020. Now it's 70 million. That's 12 million people.
Well, there it is. He got the population wrong, I should say. However, his overarching point was about the society we're in, the benefits bill, immigration. These are problems. Let's speak with Nigel Evans, former Deputy Speaker in the House of Commons and a Manchester United fan, Nigel. And just like his team, in the 91st minute, he managed to come back, in this case, give an apology. Should he have done that, Nigel?
For the use of the word colonising, absolutely there is an issue. It is emotive language. And if you remember, Ian, a few months ago, one Keir Starmer talked about Britain possibly becoming an island of strangers. Do you remember that?
Yeah, absolutely. Which one could argue is much more of a pejorative comment.
Yeah, well, of course, he got hammered by some of his own MP colleagues because of the use of that language. But it shouldn't deflect away from the thrust of what Sir Jim was saying. And we are talking about a man, as you say, he's a billionaire. I know people are taking pop shots at him because he lives in Monaco and is avoiding paying tax. But the fact is, he employs thousands of people in this country who are all paying tax. He's got successful businesses, not just Manchester United. So, but the reality of what he was saying, the thrust of what he was saying, is that there are too many people coming into the United Kingdom, both legally and illegally, which is absolutely true, and that there are way too many people in this country living on benefits. Absolutely true as well. And you can't have an economy that is growing if you were chasing away, by the way, people like Sir Jim to go and live somewhere else, because taxation is so appallingly high here on those entrepreneurs and high earners. He's not the only one who's gone. I mean, my goodness me, it's one-way traffic at the moment from Britain to places like Dubai, Monaco, Italy, you name it. So I think that the Labour Party, have you noticed, Ian, how they literally are rolling out the cannons to be shot at Sir Jim in order to deflect attention both away from themselves and the appalling chaos that all the stories are about Labour at the moment, as we know.
Yep.
And secondly, they're not talking about the issue. It is absolutely right that we should be able to talk about the issue of immigration into the United Kingdom, and it has had its impacts. Of course it has.
My thoughts on it, Nigel, were whether somebody agreed or disagreed with Jim Ratcliffe on this. Of course, it divides the room. Yes, a word that many will say, well, it's a fairly inflammatory way to define the debate. For some people, that's fine. The fact that the Prime Minister thought that he should apologise because he used either a word or the subject that Starmer would, one assumes, profoundly disagree with. That's the bit I found disturbing, almost like Kim Jong-un pitching up saying, no, sorry, you can't say that.
Yeah, but you can't blame him, Ian, because when we're talking about Sir Jim, we're not talking about Sir Keir. And he must be really delighted that Peter Mandelson and Matt Doyle, both end of the pier shows, as far as I can see it, we're not talking about his appalling misjudgment in putting these two people in the House of Lords. One has been kicked out, and we now see that the chair of the Labour Party, Anatolia, said that she believes Matt Doyle ought to go as well. I mean, he only put him in a few weeks ago. This was a decision made by Sir Keir Starmer. And so us talking about Sir Jim means we're not talking about Sir Keir. And also, we're not talking about the issue that Jim has raised, which is the impact that this mass migration is having on the United Kingdom. And we want to see something done about it. It's why Rishi Sunak was kicked out of office, because he failed to send any of the illegal immigrants back. And also that we've just got to get a grip of this issue as well, of the millions of people in this country who are economically inactive. Yeah. And everybody who's going out to work are paying for those who are not working. Why are there so many millions of people who are on benefits?
I mean, that is it's not even just a legitimate debate. It's an absolute urgent one that should not go away, because no one's solved the problem.
They're trying to close the conversation down, though, Ian. That's 100%. What they're doing by rolling out Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer himself getting involved in this. They don't want people talking about it. And why? Because they are failing on both fronts.
Indeed. But don't worry, because we had growth of 0.0000001% today, Nigel. So, happy days.
Yeah, I know. I mean, yeah, they're absolutely one of the worst governments I've ever seen. Absolutely. The lowest growth, is it for 100 years or something like that?
Yeah,
it's appalling. And don't forget, this was the platform on which the government was elected. It was on a platform of growth. And all the policies that Rachel Reeves has brought forward has done quite the opposite of that. And at the same time, we've chased away all these rich people like Sir Jim, and we have got thousands of people who have illegally entered the United Kingdom, and we've got millions on benefits. They're not going to shut people up, Ian. They're certainly not going to shut me up.
Just a final word, Nigel, if you would. Votes for 16-year-olds. This debate comes and goes, but now it's making its journey through the parliamentary system. It looks like this is going to happen. In Wales, your own neck of the woods, yes, you can vote at 16. Scotland too. But most other Western countries you can't, including England. What are you making of this?
Absolutely bonkers. They are still children in my book. Yes, some of them may be on apprenticeships, etc., or working. But the reality is, and this is what it comes down to, the Labour Party made a judgment that they thought that if they brought those under the age of 18 into voting, they would vote Labour. because the thrust is that the younger you are, the more sort of revolutionary you are, the more free-thinking you are, you become more conservative as you grow older. I think he's got it badly wrong, because all the opinion polls show that even those under the age of 18 are not going to be fooled. And if he thinks by allowing however many millions more youngsters now voting at the next general election that the Labour Party are going to be beneficiaries, I don't think that's going to happen. It's going to backfire colossally.
Yeah. With you 100%. Nigel, always great to have you on. Thank you, Nigel Evans. He is, of course, the former Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons, former Conservative MP and a Manchester United fan as well, on the Ratcliffe words, the colonisation word. I mean, let's just say, look, I've long argued on the issue of immigration that the best way, because the argument's just not doing anything, is it? Nothing's really happening. We talk about it. We talk about welfare. We talk about all the problems, whether it's, you know, to me, when it comes to immigration, the big issues, massively right at the top, social cohesion is absolutely number one in that. But alongside the economics of having 900 people, I'm just talking about illegal immigration across the Channel here, 900 people every single week since Starmer came to power, crossing the Channel on a rubber boat. It's just economically unsustainable. That's just a fact, right? You haven't got to be a right-wing nut job or a left-wing anyone can understand that is not sustainable. £4, £5, £6 million a day, billions on hotels, etc. So they're the best arguments, social cohesion and the economics. And then if you start getting into the sort of emotional stuff and you use words like invader or words like colonisation, that's fine because it's a democracy. You say whatever you want. But you do run the risk that you feed into the left-wing narrative that, you see, they're all mad racists, are they? That's what they are. Bloody racists. They're invaders. That is a risk, but it's not illegal. And even if you think it's idiotic, it's not illegal to be an idiot. It's also not illegal to be wrong. What should be illegal is the Prime Minister to insist somebody apologises for using a word they don't like. And there's the problem. 0344 499 1000. Some breaking news here. Police have pictured the cowardly 15-year-old killer who murdered Leo Ross in that random knife attack after trying to drown. You may remember the story. The police have released a picture of the perpetrator, and that is Cian Moulton. Now, this is unusual because ordinarily someone's age would preclude them from being identified. Justice Chowdhury called the attack horrific and shocking. The attack on the vulnerable lady we're familiar with, and the killing of Leo Ross, which was just an utterly barbaric and inhumane, monstrous, devastating attack to take a young life. But it's been decided he can now be identified, and that doesn't always happen. Cian Moulton is the killer, just sentenced yesterday to 13 years in jail, and now pictured. And if you're watching us in vision, you will see those images of him. And also this, the $10 billion defamation law brought against the BBC by US President Donald Trump has been set for trial, February 2027. 1 year and counting. Stick it in your calendar. This is according to a Florida judge. 2027, February next year is when that trial is set to begin. Will it go anywhere? It depends on what people... This is all kind of dependent on the delicate kind of strings of different legal systems as to whether this can actually work. So we'll get some detail on that if there's more to be said. But a year's time, Trump sues the BBC. Back to our big issue of the day, 16-year-olds voting. Let's get a voice note from Andrew.
How is it that they can have a vote at 16 and yet the government is looking to stop them having social media? So does that mean that they are actually being indoctrinated at school and the leftist education system is determining which way they vote?
And there's the issue. See, that's the third time I think someone's made, thank you, Andrew, for that, has made a similar point. What are you learning at that age? I mean, they always say that when you're 16, and when you're young, not necessarily 16, I genuinely had no engagement in politics at 16. There was nothing. I was probably, I think maybe the two things that got me into politics. One was Spitting Image, because I realised obviously this was the satirical take on current affairs, which was just supreme watching, and I watched that as a youngster. So that brought me familiar with some of the faces. And then Channel 4 back in the day on a Saturday evening used to do a politics show with Andrew Rawnsley and Vincent Hanna. Anyone remember that? It was probably called something like A Week in Politics or something like that. For some, and these were two, you know, in our minds, as me and my mate, so we're about 20 at this point, used to watch this. They were kind of older guys. They probably weren't that old. Vincent Hanna no longer with us. Andrew Rawnsley is. But there was an edge to it. It was an edge to it. It didn't look like the news. It looked like something much more than that. And that absolutely drew me in to the kind of wider debates. Adam is in Nottingham on voting. Adam, what have you got for us? Afternoon.
Hi, well, your new announcer is kind of me. I don't know if it's made my argument moot or anything, but this 16-year-old voting thing, which is, if they're allowed to vote at 16, are they allowed to, if they commit a crime, are we allowed to now know who they are before they're 18? But like you say, they've just announced this other one's out, and I don't know why they've done that, probably because they think he's probably never going to be, he's never coming out of jail, he's right wrong. And
well, he got 13 years minimum, so, I mean, he'll be under 30 when he comes out of jail.
Yeah, still plenty enough time.
I've never known, every now and again they do, I don't know what the reasoning is. Maybe there is a sense that not releasing a name, you know, could cause more turmoil locally and otherwise than if you do. I don't know what but the judge, only the judge can decide, and the judge in this case decided to identify him and allow pictures to be released.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd prefer that. I'd like to know myself. I mean, we look at going back to James Bolger, John Venables. I mean, he reoffended in the worst possible way with the image. I think it was John. So I think when you're real wrong and you're in there. But going back to the 16, like you say, who knew? I mean, I wasn't into politics till way past 40. I'm 47. I've only really been into politics the last 5 years. So, and your channel has helped that. So, because I love listening to common sense, but and everything. But yeah, it's 16 is, if you're not old enough, it's daft, and they should be thinking and doing other things at 16. And I don't think it's just another Labour thing, because I think if they give them the vote at 16, they think, if I vote for Labour, when I come out, I don't have to work. You know, what 16-year-old wants to go and work?
Yeah.
Really, work is about figuring out, something, this isn't that bad, and it's great having a purpose and something to get up for, and being able to run my own life without relying on anyone having to run it for me. And that's being an adult, And I think that's true of 18-year-old, 20. My nephew, he's 21, and he's worked since he's left school. He's had a few jobs here and there, but he constantly keeps getting hired because he's one of these that shows he turns up. Yeah. So that's all they want. They just want someone to turn up a lot of the time. And I don't think a lot of 16-year-olds just don't have that in them.
That's true, yes. How many of them would be out of bed on the election day? There is also that. Although, of course, technically they are at school still at 16 or college. Adam, great call. Thank you very much indeed for that. We'll have more calls in a few moments. Andy says, colonisation is a strong word, but it's not inappropriate for the situation we are in. Malky makes this point. If 16-year-olds will be allowed the big responsibility of voting, would that mean that a person between the ages of 16 and 18 who commits a crime would then be allowed to be publicly named? All fair points coming through. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Rob, we've lived in an era of mass migration, haven't we? Yeah. More people have come into the country since Tony Blair became Prime Minister than in the 1,000 years before then. You know, in the 80s and 90s, we were living in a country where either there was net emigration, so more people were leaving than were coming in every year, or immigration was very low, in the tens of thousands. And the people who were coming in, if you look at the motives of people who were coming in, they were coming in to fill particular shortages in the NHS or, you know, do jobs, set up small businesses.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, 0344 499 1000. Poll in Lancs says, afternoon, Ian. Would this mean that 16-year-olds would be tried as adults for crimes they commit? The adult brain in males doesn't mature until about 25. You're correct. It is gerrymandering. This is a veiled corruption. There must be some way to stop this despicable man. Yeah, you just kind of look at this and sort of wonder. I'd just like someone to bolt, you know, when Keir Starmer says all he's got is this line about... Sam, have we just got that Starmer clip of what he says on this 16-year-olds voting thing? Because it doesn't, frankly, touch the sides.
Yes, I want to see that vote for 16 and 17-year-olds. If you can work, if you can pay tax, if you can serve in your armed forces, then you ought to be able to vote.
Well, yeah, but you can't stand for Parliament, Keir. You can't serve on a jury. You can't get a tattoo. You can't even buy a firework. You're still at school. I mean, there's a whole... If that's the game you want to play, man alive. Back to Ratcliffe as well. Jim Ratcliffe, he's in the news, but not because United are still curiously in the top four. Kevin's in North Yorkshire. Kev, what have you got for us? Afternoon.
I've been struggling with this Ratcliffe issue all day. Yeah. I think what gets me is when you look at foreign nations. I think it was Gaddafi that said, "We will beat them with the wombs of our women," and it was the Premier of Turkey that said, "Do not integrate. Become political, get yourselves elected, but do not integrate." When people are telling you what they're going to do, I think it was Douglas Murray that said this, when people are telling you what they're going to do, you really ought to start believing them. And I think at the end of the day, the use of this word, what was the word, colonising,
yes,
that's exactly what those gentlemen were trying to intimate, that's what they wanted them to do. The wombs of the women will cause the downfall of the West, and don't integrate, but get yourselves politically involved. And that's exactly what's happening. I mean, you look at America. America's a fundamental example of this. America, when they landed on the shores of America, they built Jamestown. They didn't integrate with the people, the Indians, and live next to them in wigwams. They colonized it by flooding the country with people, and it's exactly the same principle. There are different forms of colonization, and equally,
of course. I mean, it's just a word, right?
It is, and equally, look at colonization. Every country on this planet that has flourished, including when you look at the Central African countries, the ones that are doing the best are the ones that were colonised by the British, that gave them infrastructure, governmental rule, and it was even Gandhi said the British ruled with a light touch, and they did. You go to Ethiopia, there were about 100 diplomats over there that ruled the whole country. They didn't have huge armies over there, and that's how it all it panned out. So there are good colonisations and there are bad colonisations, and the colonisation that we are experiencing undoubtedly is one of. I mean, we've already got two sectarian Muslim party representatives, MPs in government that got elected on nothing but Middle Eastern issues. It's
I know. I mean, that's got to, and you just think, what? You know, you've got a former terrorist standing as a councillor. You've got all sorts of other elements going on, and you know, none of the. I know you have to put this caveat in every time. You know, I'm not in any way suggesting that anyone that comes over on a boat or any other form is a criminal. I mean, that would be weird to suggest that. That would make a curious debate in itself. But some of them are criminals and some of them are lethal criminals, and we don't know which ones are which. And I think to allow a country to play Russian roulette like this is a dereliction of duty by the governing party.
It's the same issue with the 16-year-olds to vote. The problem that you've got with the left is you've got the ideological left that are dangerous, and you've got the ideological people that are filled to the brim with this toxic empathy that pervades every aspect of their thought. They cannot think things through without this empathetic toxicity that they can't let it go. And it floods everything that they do. But you've got the dangerous ones that want to push things through, like this voting for the gerrymandering of the voting system. But you've equally got those genuine people that think that they're doing the right thing morally. Yeah. And it's deadly. It's, we're flooded with it. And the problem is until people get a grip of it and realise it, it won't change.
Yeah, I like it. Good point. Well put as well, Kevin. Thank you very much indeed for that. Stuart says, here we go again with billionaire Jim Ratcliffe acting like a wimp when some woke, anti-British, left-wing, treacherous creep like Starmer tells him it's all so embarrassing for the British people these days. Yeah, I'm really surprised that Ratcliffe came back on that. I don't think he said it. If you watch the interview as well, for those that have, decided that somehow Jim Ratcliffe is, almost the EDL because he said this, if you look at the kind of intonation and the context in which he said it, he was quite relaxed. And I think his mind was just sort of trying to find the right word, and maybe he got the wrong word. I mean, the point is, it's not. As our last caller there said, there's many variables of what colonisation can look like. But even if you took it in its worst scenario, are we really saying one man is not allowed to have that opinion? And for the Prime Minister to pitch in and say he should say sorry. And then Starmer, again, maybe it's all part of this new kind of left-wing Beano that the Labour government are now going on. We're proud of our diversity. Ratcliffe didn't say anything about diversity. He was talking about mass immigration. And we have a mass immigration problem. We have a huge social cohesion problem. And we have a massive economic problem. They're not opinions, they are facts. And if somebody doesn't know that, they should not be running our country. And every time somebody from the left, Starmer did it with that Twitter response, Sadiq Khan has got the guy that's got a degree in this kind of old shizzle. We are proud of our diversity. Diversity is our strength. Is that seriously all you've got? You'd be kicked out of a debating society if you simply resorted to that daft platitude. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, just gone 2:30. Now, a farmer has been left with a £40,000 clean-up bill after 200 tonnes of waste were fly-tipped on his land. The Hertfordshire farmer, who's in his 80s, said the huge pile of rubbish was dumped on his field near St Albans last summer. Let's speak with Will Dickinson, who's the neighbour of the farmer who's been hit by this massive bill. Good afternoon to you, Will.
Good afternoon.
I mean, this sounds like the sort of thing they make a film over, right? I mean, some horrendous character or characters drop a load of old, I can't say the word on air, but you know the one, a load of old nonsense into a field, and the person who owns the field gets the blame.
Yeah, and isn't that the injustice of it all? The fact that as a victim of crime,
yes,
my friend now becomes the criminal, in as much as he's got to put up the money to put the crime right.
It seems extraordinary. Have you been able to speak to Will about? Will, have you been able to speak to your neighbour about this and gauge how he feels about this? What could be a fairly extensive price tag.
Well, we've had an estimate, and I've contacted some local companies about how much it's going to cost. And given the fact that there is an enormous amount of pretty dangerous stuff in there, we've found clinical waste, we've found some asbestos, we've found some cans of oil, and all kinds of building waste and that sort of stuff. So it's going to cost him, we think, between £40,000 and £50,000 to clear it all up. And he got a great big concrete block in the gateway, and they've obviously pushed it aside with quite a hefty machine to push it aside.
I would have
and then
thought
quietly tipped it over several nights. So what we're trying to do is make it so the law's fair. The law is just not fair at the moment.
And just looking at the extent of this this dump of things, I mean, that looks as if that's more than one lorry that dropped that off, right?
Well, we counted about 40 loads there of various different sizes, and we're pretty convinced that they came in over a period of a couple of 3 nights.
Yeah.
And of course, because this field, ironically, is in a birdseed mixture, so he will have planted it last spring for the purposes of growing plants that come to seed in the winter, so the birds can feed on it. So it's not a field that has attention all year round. So he would have left it all summer to grow this birdseed. And now that's all been ruined.
I was going to say, so, and it's sort of covered by trees, so they were able to do this. One would assume that a diligent criminal, because that is what they are, would have worked out all of that and thought, no one's going to see us. It'll be a few days before they clock what we've done, and by the time they do, we'll be long gone. So not only has he got a clean-up bill here, he's got the loss of the crop as well.
It's a sad thing. It's the loss of the environment. It's apart from the fact that there's some dangerous stuff for the environment there anyway. It's a lose-lose for the environment. He hasn't got a crop that would have come to harvest. I mean, I had a case a couple of years ago in one of my fields where the criminals came in and tipped. They went through the gateway, went round the field to the other side of the field, so I couldn't see it from the gateway, and then tipped in the standing crop. Now, I couldn't harvest that bit of crop because, again, there was asbestos, there was glass, and all that kind of stuff in there. And I still have to pay to get that all cleared up.
Outrageous stuff. And I'm assuming there is, the law of the land suggests that it's the landowner that has the legal responsibility to remove it. Is there do we know any way to circumnavigate that, Will? Does the local authority chip in? Is there a compromise? What's the deal there?
As far as I know, I don't think there is any capacity within the law to be a compromise. And actually, technically, the farm controller, the land controller, the farmer, has the legal obligation to clear it all up. And in theory, if he doesn't clear it up, then the council could prosecute him for receiving uncontrolled waste take him to court and make him pay to clear it all up.
I mean, it's an extraordinary. It's not entirely unprecedented, as you just alluded to with your own experience, but it is, it's not a thing, I suppose, that comes up that often in this sense, where you have this curious dilemma where the victim of crime, which is exactly what your friend is here, ends up being the one that has to fork out to put it right. And I don't know what the answer would be.
The tragedy is, and I'm not suggesting that it's any less of a tragedy for anybody else, but my friend, he's just had his 80th birthday. He lost his wife last summer as well. And so it's just come at a really bad time. Not that there ever is a good time for this sort of thing,
of course,
but it's just heaped it on it. And as you probably know, incomes in farming have pretty much fallen off a cliff edge this last year or two. And so it's really very, very difficult at the moment.
I was going to ask you just a final point, Will, on that. How are you finding the environment? I mean, the environment of farming and business and all the rest of it. We have a government that doesn't seem particularly fond of farmers.
You've said it exactly. We have a government that doesn't seem, by what they've done, to be particularly friendly towards farming. It would appear that food is no longer an important part of what government thinks they should provide. It's staggering, really, when you think of how many people use food banks that they don't consider food to be important.
True. Yeah, that's a good point. Will, great to have you on, sir. Do give our best to your friend, your neighbouring farmer. Thank you for being with us. That's Will Dickinson.
I will, and thank you very much for having me on.
It's a pleasure, sir. Will Dickinson, he's a farmer. He's the neighbour of the victim, and he is a victim because a load of horrendous creatures dumped tons of awful, possibly toxic waste and just fly-tipped. And now, of course, the farmer, because he owns the field, it's his responsibility to get rid of it. Now, if somebody throws litter in your garden, obviously it's your responsibility to get rid of it. It's litter, right? It's a Mars bar wrapper. It could be a couple of bottles of beer. We've all found the odd erroneous thing in our front garden that some half-wit has chucked over the wall or the fence or whatever. But this is on a different scale. And when you're talking about that much nonsense, private land, which is, potentially contains asbestos and other hazardous waste, as our guest there said, you could be looking at a bill between 40 and 60,000 quid. So that rather puts it in a sort of different place from somewhat. The principle of it's your responsibility works when someone's lobbing a Moretti bottle into your rose bush on a Friday evening. Tons of potentially hazardous waste. It's kind of in a different ballpark. You might think the local authority would have some kind of in on that, but apparently not. 0344 499 1000. Little bit of breaking news. Vincent Chan has been jailed for a minimum of 18 years for dozens of sexual offences against young girls and women while he was a nursery and school worker. The 45-year-old pleaded guilty to 56 offences, including molesting girls aged 3 and 4 while working at a nursery in West Hampstead, North London. These offences were committed over a period of 13 years. Passing sentence at Wood Green Crown Court, the judge, John Dodd KC, said your conduct was utterly wicked, perverse and depraved. You became a sexual predator and someone who clearly lost all sense of moral compass. 18 years minimum term for damage and horrendous attacks where many of those victims will never get over. 56 offences, much of those including molesting young girls aged 3 and 4 while working at a nursery. The only thing you can kind of try and hope happens there is that some of these youngsters will forget that experience. Now, that doesn't in any way underplay the severity, but it's almost the only thing you can... I was talking to somebody recently whose child was very badly physically abused to the point of irreparable damage to his young body. And she said the only light out of all of this, he has no memory of any of this. He's now much older. But that doesn't in any way excuse anything. And 56 offences, 18 years, minimum of 18 years, probably not long enough. He'll serve an extended licence period of 8 years after his sentence. He may never come out of jail, and I think we all hope he probably dies in jail. Vincent Chan, minimum of 18 years. 0344 499 1000. Lots of big issues to get into here. We're talking about who would have thought the co-owner of Man United would be on our news agenda today? But he is. His name's Jim Ratcliffe, of course. It's what he said that has upset the Prime Minister. Carl's in Liverpool. Afternoon to you, Carl.
Afternoon, Ian. You're all right?
I'm good as gold, thank you. What are your thoughts? Now, I'm pretty sure as a Scouser, you're not exactly a Man United diehard. But nonetheless, has Ratcliffe done anything wrong here?
Absolutely not. No, it's just he said something that the woke left don't like, and now he's apologised when he shouldn't have. Really, he should have just stuck to his guns, because it's absolutely fact. It made me, it's an invasion. It is an invasion. It is. That's what it is.
And even if, like I keep saying this, Carl, even if somebody disagrees with him, which is fine, then so what? I mean, so what if somebody disagrees with him?
Yeah, exactly, and we all disagree. That's what makes us who we are. It's just, correct. I think this. Do you know what, though, Ian? This man owes us an apology for destroying our country, letting men in our country that are raping our women and kids. The crimes. I mean, where is our apology? Where's the veterans' apology for leaving them in hotels that migrants are sleeping in?
Yeah,
it's a great guy.
It's a great point. And we've got to, for some reason, any time anybody raises these issues, they're shouted down as being, at best misinformed or at worst a mad racist because you dare to say it. Well, we need to change the terms of engagement so that goes away. I thought we'd all grown up a bit now. If nobody can see that 900 people a week arriving in a country on a rubber boat every single week since Labour came, if you can't see that's a problem, you've got something wrong with you, right?
Of course you have, and this is the problem, Ian. They don't see it as a problem. They don't live in the real world. Keir Starmer recognised Palestine as a state and his wife's Jewish. Says it all about the man.
Yes, I know. Yeah, I wonder what dinner was like that night when he came out with that one. Carl, great call. I love the passion as well. There's a lot of that around on this. 0344 499 1000. On that issue of Jim Ratcliffe, here's a voice note. It comes from Phil.
Jim Ratcliffe's a private citizen. He owns a big company and he part owns Manchester United. He's not like the head of the civil service. He's not a politician. So why should he have to watch his language in order to be politically correct and politically accurate, etc., etc.? In the grand scheme of things, his opinion means nothing. So why is everybody getting their knickers in a twist?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if this was, I don't know, a Tory MP, then Keir Starmer playing politics might want to have a pop. If it was Kemi Badenoch, if it was Ed Vaizey, whoever, yeah, he might want to steam in on that one. This is a businessman who, by the way, pays more tax than most people could ever have imagined, and I know he's moved now, and don't blame him for legging it to Monaco, employs thousands of people. His contributions are there for all to see. He's the perfect, if you like, British story of, coming from a working class background, a proper one, not a Keir Starmer one, grew up in a council house and ends up as a billionaire. Fair play to Jim, and if he used words that Keir Starmer doesn't like, as Phil just said there, then so what? I mean, so what? He's also, in addition to everything I just said, a private citizen. So can people just have a day off and calm down? He should say sorry, said Keir Starmer. Oh, shut up. We'll do Voice of Doom and more coming next on Talk.
we've lived in an era of mass migration, haven't we? Yeah. More people have come into the country since Tony Blair became Prime Minister than in the 1,000 years before then. You know, in the 80s and 90s, we were living in a country where either there was net emigration, so more people were leaving than were coming in every year, or immigration was very low, in the tens of thousands. And the people who were coming in, if you look at the motives of people who were coming in, they were coming in to fill particular shortages in the NHS or, you know, do jobs, set up small businesses.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk 0344 499 1000. Lots to get through. We're going to go back to the phones in just a second and talk to Vernon. Before we do, Voice of Doom, day 15. Our producer Finn has ruled out giving any clues for at least another 5 days, which is tricky because I'm off for 3 days next week. But nonetheless, we'll see how it goes. Day 15, remember this is a mystery voice. It's political, so you're looking for... I mean, it's usually a politician, all right? It could be somebody connected to politics, but it's a politician, OK? Young, old, dead or alive, left wing or right wing, very simple task. Who is this?
This is your chance.
And here it is again.
This is your chance.
And again.
This is your chance.
87222, 87222, that's where to message if you know who this is.
This is your chance.
And of course, as I always say, if somebody gets it correct, we'll let you know right on the other side of the news.
This is your chance.
There it is again. Guy can't stop himself. 87222 if you think you know. Vernon's over here in Staffordshire. On Ratcliffe, Vernon, what have you got for us?
Greetings, Mr. Collins.
Greetings.
I'm delighted that Mr. Ratcliffe told the truth, because it's time for some honesty.
Yeah.
Time for the grown-ups in the room to accept.
Yeah.
And there's nothing people can say, because the truth always upsets people. You know, 9 million plus people on benefits, not acceptable. If I was a politician, if I was the Prime Minister, I'd give 6 months' notice to people.
Yeah.
And apart from those that need benefits, i.e. they're dying or they're disabled, there would be no form of benefits. If you have children, guess what? Your choice, you pay for them. And it'd be amazing to get people back. If you give them 6 months' notice, I'll guarantee to you at 6 months they'll have jobs. And if they can't afford to live, well, they do what my parents did.
Yeah.
They get a second job.
Yeah.
And if they can't afford to live, guess what? Mum gets a second job.
Yeah, it's called personal responsibility. It now sounds apparently like some kind of right-wing mantra. I always thought it was common sense.
Well, the thing is, Ian, common sense you can't have in the UK currently, because you get Zara Sultana, who's, you know, she's like a Fruit Loop, isn't she? You know, the reality of it is that I've just come back from Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and if I was living out there and I lost my job, I would get the square root of zero. You know why? Because I'm an immigrant.
Yeah.
And I'm not their responsibility.
That's
it. And at some point, the world has got to understand, the world of Great Britain, United Kingdom, we cannot answer everyone's prayers.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be benefits apart from those people that are in need of, lost their job for a short period of time, because you've got to get back to work. If you have children, it's a choice.
Yeah.
I don't want to pay for them.
I don't ever remember,
it.
My mum and dad, who had the square root of naff all when I was growing up, I don't ever remember, and I now know this as fact, Any conversation about benefits, signing on, even when my dad had some pretty quiet times, during the tough periods of trying to get work, etc., there was never a conversation about the only time it ever came up was when he had cancer and wasn't going to live, and whether there was any kind of assistance that he might be able to get. And it was a basic inquiry. And you know what, Vernon? The answer was no. There was no help for him.
Ian, let me just spend just 30 seconds of your time and just enlighten you. So Saturday evening, I'm having dinner on a beach in Dubai. Everyone's having a really good time. Ladies are dressed like ladies in a Muslim country. Very beautiful. Everything's lovely. And yet we have those same people who have come to this Christian country and they are telling our ladies to cover up. It's just, honestly, it seems like the whole of Europe has lost its brain and it's pandering to the minority.
It seems
is
scared.
gaslighting.
Yeah,
Starmer is gaslighting. He wants the votes.
He's scared witless to kind of come back in any sort of forceful way, and that's why he says things like, we have diversity. It's like, really? Is that all you've got, mate? Matthew, great call. Thank you Vernon, rather, sorry. Great call. Thank you very much indeed for that. Let's get a call on Ratcliffe as well from Matthew in Newport. Matthew.
Hi. I just want to have a sort of counterpoint that you said, why should anyone, take his opinion? Well, he had exposure on Sky. I mean, if we were just down in the pub having a chat, the comments wouldn't mean anything. So the bloke comes out, successful businessman, he comes out and says factual untruths about the population of the country, and then he does this thing that what's the term he used? Not invaded, was it?
Colonisation.
Colonisation. Well, really?
Very bad word, very bad word, Matthew, apparently.
Well, it's not about it's just crass, isn't it? It's misjudged. But let's
if anything, the worst it is slightly misjudged or slightly misplaced, maybe. But it kind of, we all knew what he meant, and I don't think he was there to try and start some kind of race row.
But you started lauding this guy. He's paid so much, more tax than any of us would ever do. Now, I worked for 45 years, PAYE. I couldn't pay myself dividends like some self-employed people I could mention. I couldn't reduce that. He moved his businesses from Hampshire to Switzerland, saving him 100 million a year, 2010. 100 million a year, that's 25 years. That's 2.5 billion he's just saved. He moved this stuff to Monaco. He saved himself 4 billion moving his tax things to Monaco. Imagine if he actually paid his fair share of tax and gave it to the society in which we're in. We might be a bit better off when these people, rather than hoard there and avoid taxation.
Yeah, but he's allowed to. I know what you're saying, but of course you could still argue that, and this happens with companies that are, I don't know, Facebook. Don't pay enough tax, but actually, if you look at the amount of staff in this country that work there, they all pay tax. So I mean, Ratcliffe, if he wants to move to Monaco and avoid 4 billion quid, then good luck to him, surely, because his contributions are still massive. Even if you take him personally out the equation.
Yeah, but you're looking at it in not a percentage man. It's massive, but it's a lower percentage that I paid for 45 years. And I'm not a grifter who can move to Dubai and try and get my taxes down. I work out of Britain. I pay my taxes into this country for the benefit of other people, for people's pensions. We haven't got enough people in this country to be paying for the future pensions of others, like yourself and myself. And other people, businessmen, are just... Why does he need any more money when he's got billions? I think you can stop at 10 billion, can't you?
Well, I don't think he...
greed.
Yeah, well, is it greed or is it just a case of if you believe... But are you saying then that's the only motivation is greed? Because I think Jim Ratcliffe will probably go, no, I don't need any money. Simultaneously, I don't want to function in a country that is not running correctly and I'm being asked to cough up left, right and centre.
Well, maybe you should help run the country a bit better by paying his due taxes like I did for 45 years.
Well, I think he's probably paid... I think over those years he's probably paid those due taxes, but now he's legged it to Monaco.
No, he hasn't.
Well, what do you mean he hasn't?
No, he hasn't.
He has.
He hasn't, because as a percentage, if I'm going to say, you can't just say this isn't an argument. An argument, this is contradiction, as a Monty Python sketch. You can't just
the wrong room for that.
Say no. Yeah, I know. This is hit on the head lessons. No, what I'm trying to say, I'm trying to say that if the man had paid proportionate and percentage of his wages taxes that I did for 45 years, where I couldn't avoid them by doing clever things, like, say, moving to Dubai, like some people do, and, you know, keeping their kids in school over here and paying your taxes, this country would be better off without all those people.
Well, I don't know, because I think he's probably paid hundreds of millions in tax, whatever the percentage argument is. I know it's a persuasive one. I hear you, Matthew. Thank you for a great call. Voice of Doom, who is this?
This is your chance.
87222 if you know. Let's get the news headlines at 3.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed the Afternoon Empire. It is the home of common sense, and it is the place where we do business. We're going to be talking in a moment more about what happened in Parliament yesterday. I think this story needs revisiting. This is where Keir Starmer got very, very upset. Something else Keir Starmer is up to is allowing legislation for 16-year-olds to vote at the next election. That begins its journey through Parliament. The Representation of People Bill also includes other things about rules around political donations. There might be some good in some of that. We'll look at that story too. And as you've been hearing, we've been discussing Sir Jim Ratcliffe's comments about colonisation. He's now apologised after his claim that Britain is being colonised by immigrants. This, of course, created a right old hullabaloo. The Manchester co-owner should apologise, said Keir Starmer, and today, well, he did. He said, I'm sorry if I offended anybody. Should he have apologised, for goodness sake? We'll have more on that. And Dave Stewart from the Eurythmics will be joining us at 3:30 to speak about the risks, or is it the benefits, of AI in music. This is a massively controversial issue. There's a lot of musicians and writers that are very, very upset and understandably worried about where this... Well, the journey has begun, by the way, but where it goes next. And we'll talk more about that with Dave Stewart from the Eurythmics later in this hour. 0344 499 1000. This in from Joanna in Salisbury. When I see what is going on in schools and universities, the voting age should be at least 25, when they are old enough to see the system and realise who is taxing them. Yeah, I kind of get that. I mean, I've always thought it's... I mean, again, 16, yes, there are some kids that will be engaged at that age. I just can't think of what the thinking is behind it, other than we might get more votes from this age group than we would other age groups. Although Alan says the 16, 17-year-old vote would only account for about 1% of the vote. There's no guarantee they would vote Labour anyway, so it just doesn't matter. No, that's true, but in certain constituencies you might find it could be the thing that tips you over the line. I know the evidence is a little bit shaky on that, but broadly speaking, stereotypically speaking, younger kids in this case are more likely to vote Green or Labour, but there is an emerging belief that certainly young guys of that age could be tempted by reform. But what is that? Why do you need to introduce something that isn't required? That's the thing. What's the compulsion and the desire to get this through Parliament? Let's speak to Michael in Hertfordshire on this issue. Michael, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm going to take a guess you're not 16, firstly.
I wish my children were 16.
Love that. What do you make of this?
I honestly believe what other people have said. They're doing this because they're hoping they're going to get extra votes. But 16-year-olds, most of them won't even bother to vote. The whole thing is ridiculous, and I think it will be challenged in the High Court anyway. And the other thing I'd like to say, if you allow me, was Jim Ratcliffe.
Yes.
People are being called racist, but they aren't racist. What they're trying to say is this country has always been a country of immigration for people's lives at risk. People are not talking about people's lives at risk. We're talking about the country as a whole cannot cope with people coming to this country. If they're coming because it's going to save their lives, 100%. But the schools can't cope. The surgeries can't cope.
Literally. I mean, these aren't matters of opinion. These are facts, right? We have too many people trying to draw on too few services.
There are thousands of people on the housing waiting list who have been waiting years for houses.
Correct.
This is just common sense. And people are being called racist because they're talking common sense. And it's absolutely ridiculous. And for Sir Keir Starmer to ask someone to apologise, if he had to apologise for everything he said and the mistakes he'd made, he'll be on the phone all day or on television all day making apologies for the whole 2 years he's been in business.
It will be on a loop for the rest of time, wouldn't it? Good point. Michael, absolutely. I love it. Thank you very much indeed. Lovely to speak, Michael, in Hertfordshire on voting age. This is Graham in Yorkshire. Back to Ratcliffe. Graham, what have you got for us? Hi.
Afternoon, Ian. Absolutely fuming when I heard this guy, Matthew, talking about how terrible Ratcliffe is because he goes off and spends his time abroad because he doesn't want to pay tax. Where that guy gets it from, I don't know. The situation now over here is that anybody who is successful, and usually their success means that other people benefit from it considerably, like all the employees that Ratcliffe has got in this country.
Yeah.
They earn the money, and now we're having everything whipped off us. I've had a good job nearly all my life, and never taken expensive holidays. I've built up, though, a reasonable pension because at that time that is what you were advised to do. Managed to put it in a trust for the kids. So this is part of my pension has got to pack it in a trust, and they would have got 100% of that between the three children.
Yep.
Now they are going to get 35% of it.
Wow.
Because Rachel is will be taking 65% of that full amount, and he's taking it from. Two of my children are self-employed. They've got businesses themselves. They employ people, and they've been concerned about pensions and taking pensions. And to be honest with you, I've said don't worry, you'll be all right.
Mm.
You don't put money away in a pension at the moment. You don't need to, because you'll be left plenty, and just get out and enjoy it. And now this government has taken all that away. And I'll tell you, I love this country. I love the people. But if it wasn't for staying near the family, I would go tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I would leave.
I mean, that is a disturbing and profound figure that you just mentioned about putting, some money away for your kids. 100% of the money, there's the money, and that's for them. And now it's worth 35% of what it was. I mean, that's because of government legislation that has come in with different taxations, I'm assuming, that reduce the value of it. I mean, that's outrageous.
Said that these sort of funds are going to be subject to inheritance tax. So it gets inheritance tax, which is 40-odd%, and then it gets they will get it. When they get it, they will have to pay personal tax on it as well.
We've just got we've just got this horrendous addiction to taxation. This has got to be that's got to be taken. Got to have a tax here. And what about when you're dead? No, there's another tax for that as well. Well, what about if you give somebody money that's already been taxed? Nope, there's another tax on that. I mean, it just goes on, and it's not just this government, but this government have taken it to new and disturbing levels, Graham.
Yeah, exactly. And this tax, this was one in the first budget that she did, comes into effect this April. So I've got about 6 weeks to top myself so that the kids can get the benefit.
Wow, don't do that.
And,
I get you.
I shall be asking to be buried with my hand sticking out of the coffin with 2 fingers stuck up.
This one's for you, Rach.
A sign of victory. I've beaten you, Rachel.
I hear it. Graham, thank you very much indeed for that. Lynn says Jim Ratcliffe didn't actually apologise. He said, I'm sorry if I upset some people, but he didn't actually say he was sorry for what he said. Clever, I think, but these thick Labour MPs think they've achieved a victory, the fourth. Well, that's true. He didn't. He's apologised if he caused offence. This is absolutely bang on. One here from not unreasonably from Joe, who says you should mention the serious content of Ratcliffe's interview relating to the state of our economy and its future, trivialised over one word by politicians and the media. Yes, that's true. It is a rather interesting. I have seen it, and it is there's quite a lot that was said in there, but naturally, and this is not exclusive to this story, it happens. A politician says something within an interview, and that's the bit that gets picked up on. Not always the most intelligent way to digest our news, but nonetheless, simultaneously not irrelevant either. But Joe is quite right. Check out the full interview, and you can see a much more interesting flavour of discussion from Ratcliffe in that. Carol's in Warrington, votes for 16-year-olds. Carol, what are you making of this?
Hi, Ian.
Hiya.
When I rang in, no one had actually brought this up at the time, and there has been a few people that have mentioned it since, so sorry about that.
All right.
But it was just the fact that now, because you have to stay in education until the age of 18, unless you're on an apprenticeship.
Correct.
And the minimum wage at 16 is £7.55 an hour.
Right.
So even if they were on an apprenticeship, they would very unlikely be earning enough to be able to pay tax, which is a thing that Stammer brought up.
Yeah.
So I think that eliminates the tax reason for bringing down the age. But because it seems silly to me. It's like saying, well, you can still vote for the future of this country while you're at school. Because if you have to go to higher education, you have to go to college until you're 18. You're in education. So
it just sounds quite funny when you put it like that, doesn't it? When you're at school, you'd be pulled out of the maths lesson to go and vote in the assembly hall. Love it. Carol, thank you very much indeed for that. 13 minutes after 3 o'clock. Let's move to this story. Keir Starmer was accused of packing his government with paedophile apologists as he struggled to defend another controversial appointment on Wednesday. One of those that challenged him, and this is a great intervention from Ed Davey, leader of the Lib Dems. Have a listen.
Mr. Speaker, to appoint one paedophile supporter cannot be excused as misfortune. To appoint two shows a catastrophic lack of judgment. The right honourable gentleman once told this House that when a Prime Minister refuses to take responsibility, and I quote, "It only serves to convince people that things cannot get better, that governments cannot improve people's lives, and that progress is not possible because politics does not work." Does he still agree with himself? And does he share my fear that is exactly what is happening now?
Minister. People in this country, millions of people, have been let down for years and years and years. And one of the reasons was austerity, which his party supported. He should take accountability and take responsibility for what he has inflicted on this country. Surrender, David.
Mr. Speaker, I think I touched a raw nerve.
He certainly did touch a raw nerve. I thought that was arguably one of the most extraordinary moments. Look, we're all aware that a Prime Minister, left-wing, right-wing, whatever, in a PMQs scenario dodges the question. But that was just plain weird. I mean, he went into a response on austerity. Really? He was being asked about appointing people who are friends with convicted sex offenders, child sex offenders. And he got so rattled by that. So 2 points was, the irrelevance of Starmer's response, but the level of absolute anger that he was feeling was extraordinary. The Prime Minister, of course, was absolutely skewered over the decision to hand a peerage as well to his former communication chief, Matthew Doyle, despite knowing that he stayed friends with a Labour politician who was charged with child sex offences. Starmer's response was as punchy as always.
Mr. Speaker, Matthew Doyle did not give a full account of his actions. And on Monday, I promised my party and my country there would be change. And yesterday, I removed the whip from Matthew Doyle.
Well, I think the clip we played before that, the Ed Davey clip, kind of went to the heart of the problem here, which, as I say, Starmer spectacularly batted off in the most bizarre fashion. Christine Jardine, MP, Lib Dem MP for Edinburgh West, is with us. Christine, nice to have you with us. I mean, the Ed Davey moment there, your leader, I thought was a beautifully and calmly and intelligently phrased question. But my goodness, you've been in the House of Commons long enough. The response he got was not just irrelevant, I mean, we can argue about that, but absolutely ferociously infuriating moment from Keir Starmer. He was rattled.
He was very rattled. It obviously touched a nerve. And actually it should, because the situation is completely unacceptable that we have now. And the public must be looking at the House of Commons and the government in particular and wondering what on earth was going on. What were they thinking? Why did they not realise that Mandelson, that they should dig deeper before appointing him, and that, you know, there was a report about the now Lord Doyle. So, I mean, it does beg a belief, and you have to stop and think this is damaging politics. This is damaging the reputation of every politician in the country. It's damaging the reputation of government. And today we had an urgent question about just exactly what the government are going to do and how quickly we're going to see the papers. And we're going to get to know all about the Peter Mandelson recruitment, particularly.
Yeah,
appointment,
it's interesting. I hope it's not full of weird redactions, as some of these things often are.
Well, it has to go. Some of it will have to be. Will have to go before the Intelligence and Security Committee to protect national security.
Yeah, no, I get that if there's an obvious security issue. I think with Mandelson, I mean, one could answer this even in a more simple fashion. If you take the whole Epstein friendship out of it, anyone whose nickname was the Prince of Darkness might not have been on the shortlist for a job as the ambassador to the United States.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, we were all a bit shocked when it was announced, simply because, if you like, Mandelson had this reputation. He'd been sacked twice already from government, and you had to question just exactly why he was being appointed, and the fact that it now looks as if the due diligence didn't come up with things it should have come up with. We need to know how this happened. We need to know exactly how it happened and how it could have been avoided. And what we also need to do, which I'm pleased today that the government agreed to, is we're going to have some way of stripping people of peerages when they do something which is unacceptable, against the public interest, breaks the law. We now have the situation where we've got questions about Matthew Doyle, Lord Doyle, Peter Mandelson, Michelle Mohan. All of these people there are questions about, and they are peers of the realm, and there must be a way of stripping them. We need the legislation to come forward quickly so that we can do something about it.
Yeah. You've been in Parliament almost a decade now, by my reckoning, Christine. So you've seen.
Good grief.
I know. Sorry to do that to you. You've seen them come and go. I think we had 75 Conservative leaders in that time. So there's been a few there. So you've seen some pretty grim performances at the dispatch box, from Johnson to Truss to goodness knows who else. You've witnessed all of this. But actually, Starmer's position it's looking very delicate at the moment. They obviously had this reset, or sort of reset, where I don't know how, somehow, all within a very short space of time, people like Angela Rayner and Andy Burnham, I know he's not in Parliament, but these people were suddenly supporting him when half an hour ago they were about to campaign against him. So something happened behind the scenes. The whips were doing their jobs or whatever. But Starmer is looking like a bothered man right now. Does that come across when you're in the chamber?
Well, he looks uncomfortable because there is a lot going on which would make you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I think the important thing, I don't want to get involved in the Labour Party leadership shenanigans. That's up to them. But I think what I do want to see, and what most of us want to see, is them making sure that they do not go down the same chaotic rabbit hole that the last government went down. And, Prime Minister after Prime Minister, Liz Truss for, fewer than 50 days, Rishi Sunak never really having the confidence of everybody, Boris Johnson having messed up, Theresa May being pushed out. And it just became a psychodrama.
Yeah.
They are there to govern, and what we want them to do is focus on that, focus on governing. Now, there are other things which have come up which do need to be investigated. We need to get to the bottom of that. But wouldn't it be nice to go back to the days when you could be sure that people would know who the Prime Minister was for the duration of the Parliament?
Yeah.
I mean, it would be useful.
I think you're asking a lot there, Christine, to be honest.
We could have stability in the economy.
Yeah.
We could have some confidence in the stock markets that the government was going to carry on. That is what we need, stability.
You might be pairing up with them, having said that, in 2029. You never know.
Who might?
You guys.
Ha! Who told you that?
Well, I mean, it's not like it hasn't happened before.
2020 it's happened in Scotland. We've been in coalition with the Labour Party, and we were in.
No, but I meant coalition in Westminster with the Tories.
Yeah, it has happened before, but you know what? We won't know what's going to happen in 2028, 29 until we get there and we have the general election.
Yeah.
And speculation at this stage is just hot air.
Would you do it though? Would you? I mean, you've got more MPs than you used to have. You had a bit of a quiet wilderness few years, but you're back. The Lib Dems.
If we have more MPs, I would want to see us as the official opposition, or perhaps even in government. But you know what? That is all down the road. There's a lot of water to flow under the bridge between now and the next general election. We've got the local council elections coming up in May. when people in England will have the chance to see what they think about this government, and the devolved parliaments in Scotland and Wales. Now, that's important in Scotland, where we want change. We've had 19 years of the SNP, and believe me, that's enough.
Yeah, well, nobody's going to argue with that last point. Christine, great to have you with us. Thank you. Christine Jardine, Lib Dem MP for Edinburgh West. Thank you to her. And Ed Davey did have, I mean, that was just a beauty of it was so calmly put, considering the magnitude of the seriousness of what he was asking. And it absolutely drove Keir Starmer potty. Rattle doesn't even cover it. More from you on the way. We'll do the voice of doom in a moment. Have we got a correct answer? Dave Stewart from the Eurythmics is going to be with us talking about AI in music, because he's got a slightly different view on the future of that. It's all coming up right here on Talk.
I don't think Labour know what they're doing on this. They're saying to my daughters that they're not allowed to look at social media. They can't, buy a non-alcohol beer. They won't be able to have a vape, but they'll be able to vote at 16. It just doesn't make any sense. I think this is going to backfire, actually, for Keir Starmer, because I don't think that young people are going to look at this Labour government and think it's actually doing things in their interest. The country feels like it's in a mess at the moment.
I don't...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Shall we just do the voice of doom here? Before the news, seems like an age ago now, we played you this voice.
This is your chance.
Very simple question. Who is that? These are some of the guesses. Christopher Hitchens, kind of ish. But no. Nigel Farage, no. Jeff Hoon, David Owen, Dennis Skinner, no. Margaret Thatcher, no. David Steele, it is not. John Knott, it is not. Frankie Howard, I titty ye not, whatever it was he used to say. Was that Frankie Howard? I don't know. Ken Dodd, maybe. No, it isn't. We haven't got a right answer, so it's back tomorrow for day 16. We can hardly wait. Back to your calls, particularly on that issue of 16-year-olds voting. This is Carl in Liverpool. How are you doing, Carl?
Hi, Ian. Hi, yeah, I'm good.
Good.
Ian, obviously, I listen to your show all the time, and this 16-year-old subject baffles me. I have just a niggly feeling that is this not a attempt to sort of drop the legal age limit, completely? So from 18 down to 16 as an adult, what we see people as adults. It worries me. They go on. Starmer and all this sort of said, you can go in the forces at 16 and everything else.
So they would. Do you sense they would change everything then? So that big list of things you still can't do till you're 18, all of that would shift.
Yeah, I don't want to start any conspiracies or anything like that, but
no, go for it.
If you're dropping the age of voting to 16, so basically, you're giving them their vote, is the next thing that they're going to start dropping the age of consent? I personally would put the age of consent up to 18. Too many young girls are getting pregnant. I don't think these kids, 15, 16-year-olds, they understand what politics is. They don't understand the issue. There's a lot of adults that don't understand, the left and the right and Tories, Labour, Reform, and stuff like that. And that's what really worries me. It then worries me with the way this government seems to be allowing certain religious views to get hold of our country a little bit more. Is, certain religious views don't condemn underage sex. So if we're going to drop the voting down to 16, are we going to drop legal age of consent down and stuff like that? And that really scares me.
Yeah, I mean, it's right to have those concerns, isn't it? Because I think at 16 you really aren't a fully fledged adult. I know you've got to draw the line somewhere. 18 sounds far more reasonable, and some people saying even it should go up, not down.
Yeah, definitely. And I am a big reform supporter, but more for the economical side of it, and I want industry back in the UK and everything else. I was listening to your colleague Julia show before, and a gentleman came on and he was screaming Muslims should be out and everything else. And I was appalled by what he said. Legal working immigration, our nurses, doctors and care workers that come from other nations, they're fantastic. I had an operation not so long ago, and the doctor came from abroad, absolutely fantastic. We need people like that.
And no sensible person's ever argued against that. I can never remember a life without an Indian doctor working in the local surgery. Do you know what I mean? Those guys have been around and done brilliant work forever. But that's not the debate, is it, Carl? The debate is, the average person that's hopping over the channel on a rubber boat, I don't think is likely to be the consultant that you meet in the NHS.
Yeah. But, going back to the age of consent of the voting, these kids nowadays, they seem to be swayed on, people are allowed to come over on boats. People should be welcomed into our country, whether they're illegal, whether they're throwing the passports in the sea, or whether they're convicted and failed asylum in various other countries. You've only got to look at Bangor University, for instance, wouldn't allow Sarah Poaching to go and debate. They all have this.
That was, that was a little bit weird. But I guess, I've lost count over the years of how many universities have cancelled people for a whole raft of reasons. Left-wing thinkers, people like Germaine Greer was cancelled. I mean, you can hardly call Germaine Greer some kind of right-wing nut job, can you? But there you go. Carl, I've got to move just for time. No other reason. Thank you, mate, for that. Lots to come. We're going to talk AI and music in a moment. Dave Stewart of course, I mentioned the Eurythmics. You can mention other bands there as well, because there are many. But Dave's going to be with us to talk about that issue of AI and music. It sort of divides the music industry. Do you embrace it? Do you work against it? All of that coming up next on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, just gone 3:30. We talk about AI quite a bit in different forms because it's kind of unstoppable in every form, frankly. And there's all the obvious stuff, and some of it's quite amusing. You know, someone can make what looks like a pretty well-cut, high-end, you know, almost mini film, drama, video, meme, whatever. And you think, well, they just did that in like half an hour on a phone, for goodness sake. The world has changed. And in the music industry, of course, there's lots of discussion about this. Many musicians are perturbed. I've seen people do it in the office. Somebody's just made a song. Invented an artist, as it were, given the artist a name, for goodness sake. So it's ever-changing, and it's going to change even more. Let's speak with Dave Stewart. Dave, of course, I was about to say, Dave, mostly known for the Eurythmics. If I just introduced you as Dave Stewart from the Spiritual Cowboys, would you be offended?
No, that's fine.
That's good. It's nice to have you with us. You've been around the block a long time. You know a thing or two about producing, writing and performing. If somebody had said to you back in 1990, what do you think about AI? We'd have all scratched our heads. It didn't really exist. But it's, as I mentioned, it's sort of unstoppable. We're in a funny position now in all sorts of areas of creativity. You've co-founded an organisation called Rare Entity. Tell us what that's about and what you're attempting to do when it comes to music and AI.
Yeah. Funnily enough, in about 1984, 85, I wrote a sort of story called TVP, and it was about predicting this happening, and it was about a TV planet.
Wow. That
was actually a satellite, and all the TV companies, communication companies had joined together, and it was just being beamed down to Earth from one satellite, and that all the advertising companies would pay fortunes to be chopped into the programming. And Annie and I actually did some songs thinking about that, and one of them was Last Night I Dreamt Somebody Loved Me, and cover songs. And yeah, it was predicting this coming. And we just made 1984 soundtrack, which would obviously be been in the George Orwellian.
Yeah.
Which we're in again right now. But
well, I was going to mention that because whenever we do these discussions, everybody reaches for the Orwell kind of metaphor, as it were, and obviously you literally wrote the theme to the film. But we are kind of in that place, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's like the thing is that obviously there's been wars raging around the world for centuries, and now it's all coming at once through various media and through social media, and of course with the ways of twisting what's coming out as well. So there's a bombardment of the senses, basically. And when you just talked about AI in music, of course AI is probably going to kill us all, but not just music, but I mean us.
Well, yes, yeah.
Yeah, but we can't really stop the fact that a policeman's going to be a robot running down the street at about 50 times the speed of you could, Yeah. So, but, yes, in theatre hasn't been... I mean, in every part of the arts, it's affected it in the creative. But what I always say is, but you see, the whole thing about being a creative or an artist or a musician or somebody in theatre or making film is the journey of life. If AI was back then, I would never have met Annie.
True.
I mean, Annie and I wouldn't have had this journey together. And, when I'm writing a song with somebody, they're really there. And we might go sit by a riverbank, but that's your living, you're actually doing something and being part of a whole, a journey of your life. And so that narrative that's happening in the news is affecting the narrative of people's lives, you see, because if you get lost too much down the wormhole, and it's obviously we have to pay attention to all the terrible things that's happening and do whatever we can to stand up, power to the people, or donate to Doctors Without Borders, or whatever you can do in your big way or small way.
Sure.
But we don't want our lives to get derailed so much that we're completely confused as to who we are, what we're doing, and what is actually happening. Now, with AI, it's very easy to trick people into thinking, oh, that really is the news. That is Barack Obama speaking. Oh, that sounds like a great soul song. No, it's scraped from all of the other best soul songs.
Yeah. Well, that's the kind of area that I think is kind of disturbing. You're absolutely right. I always tell myself not to look at social media. Then you start to look, and then you hear a news story, you see somebody speaking, and then you do a little bit of research. It doesn't take very long, but you soon realise, oh, actually, it's not true. Somebody's just made that up, or they've got Obama or whoever saying something. And in music, and I think I've heard Ed Sheeran and Elton John and others sort of talk about this, and some people are very, very animated and very angry that, you know, I could literally go home tonight, sit in my own studio and say, OK, right, AI, get all the commands and all the cues and the prompts in line and say, right, I want you to make a track sounds a little bit like a Eurythmics song. I want all the traits and the vibes of a classic Eurythmics track, and make it now. I'll give it a name. I'll invent the artist. It'll even give me moving people if I ask nicely, and I can just do that. And that's and people would listen to it and go, oh, it sounds like the Eurythmics have recorded a new song. I mean, does that, as a musician and as the person that's been responsible for, you know, major hits over many years, does that bother you, or do you sort of, are you resigned to the fact that that's the journey, that's where we're going?
Well, I know that it's beyond my power or anything to do anything about it. And so obviously the sensible thing to do is look in a different direction of what is the new thing. It's like when, you know, steam engines didn't like it when electric trains came along. Steam engines were beautiful and the steam coming out and blah, blah, blah. But the electric trains were coming. And this is, you know, when I had a drum machine, Sweet Dreams, and people go, oh, drum machine, synthesizers, that's a terrible thing. Yeah. AI is like this on steroids times a million, right? Yeah. So the company I've co-founded here, Rare, we're looking at how do we bring people together, because people being together is a very important thing. That's why I love football, Sunderland particularly. And, you know, you're in a crowd and then somebody's about to score a goal and everybody stops thinking of what they're doing. They're all together like one consciousness here now. And it's the same in a live concert or in a theatre, watching a play or whatever. I think that's going to be hard to not want to do that. But we have to remind people that it exists. People are doing it.
Yeah.
The creative people that are doing it need to somehow earn a living. It's not like creativity is not a brilliant, you know, thing for the culture, and that Britain itself has had some of the most creative, incredible filmmakers, playwrights, bands, the Beatles or whatever, as exports around the world that has influenced generations, you know. So I could, go and say, oh, I want to write a song about my dentist, you know. I want it to sound like Elton John and this and that, and it'll come out happy teeth or whatever, you know. But there's also now people who are very smart and say, I want this really amazing jazz or soul, and the picture looks right and everything, and they've got 4 million monthly subscribers, and it's not a person at all.
Yeah.
You know, that is a bit like the movie I was talking about.
It really is. I've got there's a mate of mine who will bore anyone talking about this in terms of AI, because he's really, I mean, he's fascinated by it, he's disturbed by it, he's worried, he's apprehensive, but he has got a kind of, there's a sort of little light in his theory that he thinks it could go the other way and eventually something great comes out of this tunnel. Not the scenario necessarily that we instinctively think, which is, as you rightly said, Dave, you know, a copper chasing you down the road. There's not a copper, it's a robot, and you know, sound-alike tracks, and nobody does it. He thinks it could kind of actually have the opposite effect eventually.
Well, I think that has happened in lots of different industries. You know, people get fed up of, they don't want to go to a giant supermarket and buy a loaf of bread. They want to go to a bread shop. So this whole thing about, you know, farm to table and, you know, people wanting to go local and get food from their farmer or whatever. So I think, you know, some people are going, I want to listen to a whole vinyl album with our friends in a great place. And, you know, and these little small factions build up into a huge industry where suddenly everybody's eating kale. You know what I mean? It's like, so I think there's always, you know, cause and effect and the two opposites.
Yeah.
One side of things, which is the human side I'm talking about, we don't want that to fade away because I got signed to Elton John when I was 19 years old to his record label, to be in a little piano room and he's playing me Daniel, the song that he's just, you know, about to release, Don't Shoot Me Harmony, the piano player, and to hear him sing and play the piano, that is something that is a very magical experience.
Of course it is.
To be with somebody in a room writing a song with them and they suddenly hit this amazing melody and a line that blows your mind.
Yep.
You're experiencing something in real time with a real person. I think that's very difficult to replace. And that's what I think that, you know, it's very important that in Britain or anywhere, you know, the schooling system or whatever, don't take away, you know, oh, that's just music or that's just the theatre side or whatever, you know. That is, you know, throughout the ages, the only thing people remember is, you know, the written thing, the play, the painting. That's all that exists, really, you know, that you can base what happened on. And I think, you know, last bastions of democracy artists, basically. And so they'll be to the very end, whether John Lennon's singing Power to the People or whatever.
Yeah.
There's got to have this, you know, rub against everything that's going, but especially now, I mean, Jesus Christ, the Epstein files, the corruption, everything that's happening, it's almost making people just like want to give up, sick to the stomach, and you just can't even fathom or take it in that this people in power have the power to sort of try and erase and all of this stuff. Obviously, it was going on for centuries, you know.
Of course. But even with that, Dave, so sorry to interject, but I noticed with the Epstein files, I mean, there's, you know, just horrifically industrial scale abuse, and this story that went on for so long involving all manner of people. Even with that, if you look at, you know, how AI has, on social media, those stories are changed, because almost everybody's been photographed now with Jeffrey Epstein, and half of them, you know, were never there, never heard of him. But suddenly they've appeared, and there's videos have appeared. So what is real, what isn't real? That sort of feeds literally a very serious story that's in danger of being diluted through people kind of fiddling around with AI.
Yeah, I think that is obviously a massive... I mean, basically, you know, when people are speaking on behalf of Trump, you can often see them switch into, like, they're thinking, oh, Trump might be watching this, and they'll use, you know, slogans or Trumpisms or whatever, you know, and try and divert the questions away. And then, you know, you have all sorts of people making memes or whatever and trying to sort of blur the whole thing, which is, yeah, I mean, we're living.
Yeah.
We wrote a song, Annie and I, together very early on called Never Gonna Cry Again, and we're living in unfortunate times. Now, through the, you know, ages going back in the centuries, you wouldn't like to be a Christian hanging around waiting for the lion to come in, you know. But there has been, you know, massacres and everything going on. But I think it's probably 2/3 of the population of the world are living in, you know, conflict zones at the moment. And, you know, whether it's Sudan or Ukraine or in Gaza, or like people getting yanked out of their houses in America by ICE. And the trouble is, it's all coming down a funnel into people's brains. Now, what I would not like to happen is that the actual sort of consciousness of us all as humans being so infiltrated constantly with all this stuff that we forget our purpose or our being. And some people do and give up hope. There's kids teenagers commit suicide because they've been talked into it by AI or whatever, or just, encouraged. You're absolutely right. Yes, that would be a good place to hang yourself, It's a worrying time, I think, for a lot of younger people, teenagers and kids on iPads that are being talked to by grown-ups, but they have no idea what's going on. And it's an overwhelming time, really, I think. For
I was just thinking of that song, which was kind of meant to be a cheesy song at the time, Video Killed the Radio Star, but it was a pretty big global hit, as it turned out. I no idea who wrote it, but I'm sure they made a few quid out of it.
Well, it was called Buggles.
Buggles, that was it, yeah.
And it was the first video played on MTV, I think.
That's correct, yes. You're absolutely bang on. But now we're in a sort of a kind of AI killed everything area, right? So,
as I said...
So maybe Buggles will be busy again, if no one else.
Well, I think there's a lot of people... I think people at the moment are a bit more worried about what's happening in the state of the world, including artists. But if you're a young artist, musician or whatever, trying to sort of make your way, there's one thing I always say, now look, forget about social media and AI and everything, and just go and play in a tube station like I did, or in the local pub. It doesn't matter if there's 3 people. Annie and I played Sweet Dreams to 3 people and drove 200 miles to do it.
Wow.
Before it was known. And you just keep playing to real people in real places.
Yep.
And then eventually you realize, you've got a real audience of 100, 200, 1,000. And you hone your craft, and then you can make some kind of living, but not by posting your songs on Spotify against 10 million AI songs a day.
So we need to get back in touch, I think, is the central message. I love that kind of philosophy, Dave, and it's great to have you on to talk about this. Really appreciate your time. Dave Stewart, thank you very much indeed. That's Dave Stewart, co-founder of Rare Entity, and of course, best known as 50% of the Eurythmics. On this point, Paul's in Liverpool. What do you make of what you've just been hearing Dave Stewart say? Paul, hi.
Yeah, I mean, I write and produce music as well, as you know, and he's right about the steam engine. It's over. The musicians, it's finished. The kids don't want it.
Yeah.
The future kids don't want it, unless there's some crazy seismic shift and it suddenly comes back. I mean, it's like pottery, isn't it? And it's like a stonemason. There'll be specialists. In the future, there'll be someone who plays the guitar.
Yeah.
There'll be a very wow. Is that what they used to do?
But I mean, can we? What Dave was saying there was that, look, despite all of this, we've got to keep on somehow doing all the natural stuff. I think that's the headline of what he was trying to say. Is that a? I mean, it's an admirable way to look at it.
No, it's so romantic tailing.
Yeah,
it's lovely.
It's over. Creativity is over.
The kids don't even want jobs now. They want to be a YouTuber. I mean, what's that about?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, maybe that's your next calling, Paul.
No. But I'll tell you one thing before you go.
Yeah.
I wrote the biggest record in the world in '97, and I wrote the biggest record again, Ian. Now I can't tell anyone it is. They'll steal the idea because it's the idea that's the hit, not the track. It's the idea.
So it's yet to be recorded.
No, we've done it. It was few bits to do, but I'll send you it. And then when I send you it and you hear the idea, you'll say, "Yeah, I get you." So I'll do that in the next few months, and I'll say Paul in Liverpool.
All right, Paul.
You can never let no one listen.
No,
because they'll steal it, and we're finished.
Well, I might steal it and retire. You never know. You're very trusting, Dave. Paul, rather. I can't wait. Paul, great as ever. Thank you very much indeed. Paul in Liverpool. Thank you to him. Thank you to Dave Stewart. Back with you after this.
I don't think Labour know what they're doing on this. They're saying to my daughters that they're not allowed to look at social media. They can't, buy a non-alcohol beer. They won't be able to have a vape, but they'll be able to vote at 16. It just doesn't make any sense. I think this is going to backfire, actually, for Keir Starmer, because I don't think that young people are going to look at this Labour government and think it's actually doing things in their interest. The country feels like it's in a mess at the moment.
I don't...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, 0344 499 1000. More from you. Kevin O'Sullivan's going to be with us in a few moments' time. Jay in Birmingham says, Jim Ratcliffe, billionaire businessman, could run the country better than Starmer. Jim has more worth than Starmer. That's the issue. Yes, he actually does. And that's interesting because when we used to do... When I first started doing this, like for a living nationally, which is a while back, but we would from time to time do, phone-ins about who should make the, who would be the ideal prime minister type of person. And people would always go, no, you want like the CEO of Tesco or something. You want someone like that, the person that runs Marks and Spencer's or one of those, but it's pre-big internet companies and the like. And that was often said, if you get somebody with that kind of mentality and that sort of brain, that would arguably be the better choice. And of course in America they did that and they elected Donald Trump. And what I know, he was on the telly at the time when he did The Apprentice over there, which was massive, but he was a big name in the world of business before any of that, of course. And so they did elect a businessman, and he functions and governs like a businessman. Some breaking news. More than 1.4 million NHS workers will receive a 3.3% pay rise from April, the government has said. 1.4 million NHS workers getting a pay rise, 3.3%, a rise from April. Not sure where that stands within what was requested, if there was a specific request, or which specific workers it applies to. But there it is, pay rise on the way, trebles all round. Matthew is in Essex. What have you got for us, Matthew? Afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. How are you doing? All right?
Yeah, good. What are you thinking?
Yeah. Just something that just frustrated me a little bit, that just sort of, again, kicking back on common sense.
Yeah.
With regards to the comments about being colonised, whether it's happening in broad daylight, maybe a slightly derogatory thing to say, but do we remember the most common new baby's boy's name over the last 5 years?
Go on.
Well, again, I think that's something that I believe the name's Mohammed, is it not?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, I think I got a funny feeling. Yeah, there were more. I don't know if it's. Yeah, there were more people called Mohammed, more boys to that name.
And our national dish is not fish and chips, is it?
Well, they always say it's curry, but I'm never quite sure it is.
Yeah.
As much as I like curry, and I go to the curry awards, does it beat fish and chips?
No, never. Absolutely not. But again, it was a slightly tongue-in-cheek comment, but
yeah, no, I hear what you're saying.
Looking at, you know the kind of thing I'm trying to say here.
Of course.
It just seems like the kind of traditions that I'm used to and I've enjoyed seem to be slowly disappearing, and the facts do speak for themselves. So as far as our good friend who's talking about us being colonised, I have to say I agree with him 100%.
There it is, Matthew. Thank you very much indeed for that. Matthew in Essex agreeing with the Jim Ratcliffe comment. Lots more to get through. Big shows coming up throughout the course of the rest of the evening. Alex Phillips is here at 7 this evening. That's always an absolute corker. But of course, before that, it's the brilliant Drive Time show with the wonderful and the unparalleled, the brilliant, even though we can't plug a microphone in, which is why I'm still speaking, Kevin O'Sullivan.
How are you playing for time there?
I was doing it really well.
Well, it's difficult to get these things in,
It is.
As the actress said to the bishop.
There it is.
I'm here all week.
Yep. What's going on, Kev?
Well, Jim Ratcliffe, the story continues. I mean, he's the governor, like that idiot Starmer. I mean, who is he to tell people what to say? You
can't say that.
It's Jim Ratcliffe's honest opinion, and the government's acting like he's apologised. He hasn't. What he said was, if what I said offended anyone. I'm sorry it offended anyone. He's not sorry
He's
for
not
what
retracted
he said.
what he
No,
said,
he hasn't retracted. Exactly right. And I'm sick of people like Starmer going, oh, it's offensive. You know, I don't think...
who cares what
you
Starmer
say it's
thinks?
offensive, Starmer. I don't think it is offensive, so shut up.
Yeah, I hear you say stuff, Kev, that I think's
everybody
offensive.
thinks everything I say is offensive.
And that's just when you're texting me.
Yeah.
Just,
no, I mean, seriously, you know, who the hell is he to tell people
It's
what to say?
extraordinary. Yeah,
you know, demand an apology.